You've just tuned in for the latest transmission of Rice Against the Grain. I'm your host, Rice. Today, I am rejoined for round two with the Pickle King himself, Brandon Joe Williams. And in case you missed our first conversation together, I will include links down below in the video description and the pinned comment. And I definitely encourage you to check that out before proceeding with today's video. I did think about putting this video out in two parts because it is a long conversation, but I ultimately decided it was best kept in one video. We dive into some American history, including the 14th Amendment and U.S. citizenship, state citizenship, case law, and more. So sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
The Dirty Man Safe. How it works. Dig down a minimum of 24 inches and insert the safe sleeve. Place the sleeve in the hole, then the safe into the sleeve. The cable needs to be inserted into the slot in the sleeve cap. Place the cap on top of the sleeve and the handle on top of the cap. Cover it up. For safe retrieval, locate the burial spot and dig down approximately 6 inches until you find the handle. Then grasp the handle and pull upwards. The Dirty Man Safe. Don't tell anyone.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, joining me on today's show is a returning guest. Joining me for round number two, the most putridly disgusting guest I could re-invite back on the show, the King Pickle, His Excellence, Mr. Brandon Joe Williams. Welcome back to the show, BJ. How are you doing?
Good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Definitely looking forward to the conversation, as I was saying before we started recording. So, for people who might have missed the first conversation that we did together, it's posted up on both of our channels. On my channel, YouTube chose to give an age restriction, so you have to make sure you are signed in. I did appeal that for whatever reason, and Brandon posted the very same video, and there is no age restriction. So that kind of shows you a little bit of the biasness of the YouTube overlords and their algorithm that they let loose. And if you guys aren't already subscribed over at Brandon's YouTube channel, make sure you're following him. A link be down below in the video description. Pinned comment for his socials, his website, everything we talk about on today's show. Here is his X account. You can find at _1_stupid_fuck. That's right, at one stupid fuck on X. Link down below. And of course, his website that has the very same illustrious name, onestupidfuck.com. And I think YouTube is a big fan. Actually, I think social media in general is a big fan of your branding, Brandon.
I know it's kind of weird because you type in Brandon Williams or Brandon Joe Williams, there's like 8 billion names. There's a lot of NFL players and professional athletes and stuff. And I think just because of the amount of content that I have out there, I think that's why you type in any of those names and it's me for like the first couple, 2-3 pages before you start getting athletes and stuff like that. So
that's interesting with the name thing because there's a Chris Rice who is a Christian singer. There is, and apparently he has some allegations of some underage stuff potentially, which doesn't look good on Chris Rice's. Then there's and I found that out when I had Grok writing me a bio, by the way.
Oh geez.
So, and that's fun. That's fun. If you haven't had a chance to get Grok to do that for you, you should try. So, and then there's Ann Rice. Her son's name is Chris Rice. And then to top it all off, there's a group that I'm in on Facebook, and there's 129 people. It's a private group, but it's called We Are Chris Rice.
Oh my God.
There's 129 people in this group of We Are Chris Rice. And we had talked about at one point changing our profile picture to the same one.
Hey, there you go.
That would have been interesting. So yeah, good introduction. Definitely looking forward to the conversation. Last time was pretty much like us just getting to know each other. You had done me a huge service by stumbling upon the KL playlist, sharing it with your community in various fashions on social media, your newsletter. And then I sent you some other playlists and videos to check out, like the Alphonse Fagiolo, which you promoted as well, which again, I appreciate. That first conversation, like I said, was kind of an icebreaker, us getting to know each other, just generalized stuff. Today, I was mentioning the idea of kind of like talking about history, a little bit of like how we got here. And I know it goes in a sense way back. Bless you, by the way.
Yep.
But thinking about it in terms of the United States, And one of the things that you had touched on with the last show, you had just recently discovered was the sole proprietorship. And then you had mentioned to me before we started recording, talking about the slaughterhouse cases. So I would be open to starting a conversation wherever, but I guess when it comes down to what happened in the United States prior to the 14th Amendment.
Yeah, we pretty much have like an AD and a BC, sort of like before Christ, after Christ. You know, or AD is, I think, after David. So BC is before Christ, and then AD is after David, right? Is that right? I forget.
At death?
After David.
I thought it was at death, but
after death. Okay, maybe it is. I don't know. Anyways, yeah. So we have BC and AD, as far as I know, whatever that means. I forget. In America, it's basically the same thing. The BC would be before the 14th Amendment, and the AD would be after the 14th Amendment. That's pretty much how you can, if you divided up the country into two different timelines, it actually would make perfect sense.
Yeah, no, it does. And I mean, obviously there's things that lead up to those things occurring and things that also seal those things and cement it more in legal terms, not lawful terms, but legal terms. Prior to the 14th Amendment, which established U.S. citizenship, correct?
Mm-hmm.
What was
the 14th Amendment wasn't super clear as to if it established another citizenship. It wasn't until the slaughterhouse cases. So the slaughterhouse cases were the judicial branch interpreting the 14th Amendment. And then that became Supreme Court case law. And that was actually the actual birth. So if you want to get really, really specific, was it the 14th Amendment or was it the interpretation of the 14th Amendment in the slaughterhouse cases? I would say it was actually the interpretation of the slaughterhouse cases that actually birthed that U.S. citizen category. But I could be wrong, but it's one or the other.
Okay, well, prior to the 14th Amendment, was there a status?
No, there's actually Supreme Court cases saying that there is no such thing as a U.S. citizen.
Then where do we get state citizen and things like and those kind of terminology?
That was born from the slaughterhouse cases.
Okay. One of the reasons I'm asking this too, and I'm not saying that this book is like an answer to anything by any means, but I found it to be interesting. It's called the American Citizens Manual of Reference. You can order it on YouTube. Mm-hmm. I thought it was interesting because the American citizens, the 14th Amendment establishes U.S. citizen, which would be completely distinctly different than American citizen. And this book was originally published in 1840. So it's before the 14th Amendment, before the Civil War. It's a manual of reference, the American Citizens. And the other interesting thing is it reads historical, statistical, topographical, and political view of the United States of North America and the several states and territories.
Yeah.
Which would almost be completely different than what's written in other government forms. But this is like the only thing that I've seen that would reference anything sort of like a citizenship prior to the 14th Amendment was American citizen, but that's technically not really a thing.
Well, the way that I can show it to you here on a screen share, the way that to go to the horse's mouth would be to go to the slaughterhouse cases, which if you approve my screen share, what we'll do is
I was just waiting for you to get off your mirror screen area so people didn't see anything that might have been important.
No, it's all good.
Now, I'm familiar with this case, but it's not a case that I could tell you that I've read word for word.
Yeah, so what I'll do is we'll go to Google Scholar. We'll type in, we clicked on case law. We went to slaughterhouse cases, 83 U.S. 36. I'm going to click on here. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to my website and I'm going to pull, I'm going to pull some quotes here. We'll start actually with my favorite.
Are these the Thomas Jefferson quotes that you had mentioned?
No, that's a whole nother subject. That involves the difference between the state and the federal government and how state government deals with the domestic concerns, and federal government deals with foreign concerns. That's a whole different world.
Yeah, well, I think that's part of the Federalist versus the Anti-Federalist arguments.
No, it's just the difference of what it's Thomas Jefferson talking about what he actually like set up. Like he actually set it up that way. Like it's actually like not a argument. It's actually just there's a term, I forget the term, and it's like the term is when they have to go back and find the original legislative intent, so they have to do the whole timeline breakdown all the way back to the beginning of what was actually intended and what was actually going on.
Okay,
those quotes would be kind of like along that line in terms of, what is a state government versus what is a federal government. Basically, that's
well, yeah, but also based off what you were saying, it also limited the federal government in their power and what they could and couldn't do. And after the 14th Amendment, I believe it was right after the 14th Amendment, we had the Organic Act of Washington, D.C., the 18th Act of 1871, and people list that as the United States government officially becoming a legally recognized corporation. And that's when it changed from being a republic to a corporate status as far as the way that our government operates.
Yeah.
So what are we pulling up here? This is all stuff that's in relation to the Slaughterhouse case that you're going to reference back.
Yeah, I'm going to show you this quote first because this is a real humdinger. This is the one I use.
The other elephant in the room, because I'm seeing it kind of there too, is the 14th Amendment also helped to give a status to the newly freed slaves.
Yeah, we're going to cover that right now. So this case I like a lot. It's a California Supreme Court case because it's just so clear and it's so concise and it's so quick. It's like the hardest left hook you could possibly get on this whole subject.
I got it full screen so everybody can see it good.
So we'll start here and then we'll move on to the Supreme Court cases. Okay. So I like to get the quote from my website and then cross-reference it to something like Case Text or Pacer or whatever. That way people can see that we're reading off of the original text or what is considered to be a copy of the original. All right. So we have here, this case is Van Valkenburg versus Brown, 18. Let's see here. 1872. So it's around that same time as the
1871 Organic Act.
Well, Organic Act and 14th Amendment were both 1871. So here we go. So no white person born within the limits of the United States and subject to their jurisdiction, or born without those limits and subsequently naturalized under their laws, owes the status of citizenship to the recent amendments to the federal Constitution. The history and aim of the 14th Amendment is well known, and the purpose had in view in its adoption well understood. That purpose was to confer the status of citizenship upon a numerous class of persons domiciled within the limits of the United States, who could not be brought within the operation of the naturalization laws because native born, and whose birth, though native, had at the same time left them without the status of citizenship. These persons were not white persons, but were in the main persons of African descent who had been held in slavery in this country, or if having themselves never been held in slavery, were the native-born descendants of slaves. Prior to the adoption of the 14th Amendment, it was settled that neither slaves nor those who had been such, nor the descendants of these, though native and freeborn, were capable of becoming citizens of the United States, which is the Dred Scott case, Dred Scott versus Sanford. The 13th Amendment, though conferring the boon, which means benefit, of freedom upon native-born persons of African blood, had yet left them under an insuperable, which means impossible to overcome, bar as to citizenship. And it was mainly to remedy this condition that the 14th Amendment was adopted. So this one is super powerful, super clear, super simple, super fast. You don't have to go through a lot of text to see it. It's one block of text from one case. Okay.
And
So
white
people aren't U.S. citizens. African slaves or descendants of African slaves that were released via the 13th Amendment was what the 14th Amendment was trying to fix,
But
because
at the
they had
same
no
time,
citizenship.
if the white people weren't U.S. citizens, were they anything?
They were state citizens.
They were state citizens, and
Or,
that would have been
or men of the union, or men of a state. You get into that in these slaughterhouse cases. So now we're going to go above that, and we're going to go to the U.S. Supreme Court, right? And we're going to go to the big dog. This is the big dog. This is where everything happened, right? So what we'll do is we'll go back to the slaughterhouse cases, right? And we start seeing this terminology, right? This first quote here. The Negro, having by the 14th Amendment been declared to be a citizen of the United States, is thus made a voter in every state of the Union. We're starting to see some of the terminology here, right? So, the first section of the 14th article, to which our attention is more specially invited, opens with a definition of citizenship. Not only citizenship of the United States, but citizenship of the states. No such definition was previously found in the Constitution, nor had any attempt been made to define it by act of Congress. It had been the occasion of much discussion in the courts, by the executive departments, and in the public journals. It had been said by eminent judges that no man was a citizen of the United States except as he was a citizen of one of these states composing the Union. Those, therefore, who had been born and resided always in the District of Columbia or in the territories, though within the United States, were not citizens. Whether this proposition was sound or not had never been judicially decided, but had been held by this court in the celebrated Dred Scott case only a few years before the outbreak of the Civil War, that a man of African descent, whether a slave or not, was not and could not be a citizen of a state or of the United States. This decision, while it met the condemnation of some of the ablest statesmen and constitutional lawyers of the country, had never been overruled. And if it was to be accepted as a constitutional limitation of the right of citizenship, then all the Negro race who had recently been made free men by the 13th Amendment were still not only not citizens, but were incapable of becoming so by anything short of an amendment to the Constitution. This paragraph is basically the literal exact location of the birthplace of the term U.S. citizen. This is the exact section 73 in the exact case. This right here is the birth of the U.S. citizen category. So what is a U.S. citizen? It's a man of African descent who was either directly from Africa or was the direct lineage of someone from Africa. And you can go farther into that and you can say, well, what if my mother wasn't African, but my father was? And as far as my research goes, that would break this line. So basically what I'm trying to say is a U.S. citizen is a completely extinct species, because the chances that here we are 3 or 4 or 5 generations later, the chances that every single lineage of both men, father and mother, for all children down the line of 4 or 5 lineages would all have to be of African descent for them to be legally classified as a U.S. citizen. Is there anyone in this country that may fit that category? I suppose it's possible.
Right, but it's not the entire country. So that's how do we get to this?
There's
point?
Maybe if we were to call through every single human being in the whole country, maybe a couple people maybe would fit that category, but I doubt it. And even if they did, it would, you start doing these new, I don't like these tests. I think they're creepy and I would never do one, but you do these new DNA tests and it's like 40% African, 20% Irish, 20% this. Even if there was 1 or 2 people, I would say get that done and then take that into court and be like, I'm only 40% African. How does that apply to this? It says African descent. They didn't have any of this technology back then. So now we have this technology where you can say you're 20 or 30% Irish or Puerto Rican or whatever. So really, truthfully, there are no U.S. citizens. They don't exist anymore. It's like dinosaurs. If you think of U.S. citizens and then you think of dinosaurs, it's the same thing.
Based off what you're saying, yes. But then again, right now, today, U.S. citizen is the supposed only recognized status in the United States.
Yes, and that's
So
because
obviously
U.S.
something
citizen,
happened.
the U.S. citizen term nowadays includes legal fictions, and that's really so the idea that a human being, a man or a woman, can be a U.S. citizen, that is expired. That doesn't exist anymore.
Well, they're also using the term persons in here too, and this is a legal document. So the legal term for person does not go back technically to what we consider to be a living man or woman either.
Well, that's also something that happened about 15, 20 years prior to this decision, is when you started seeing that more and more and more happening.
With the legalese and the legal dictionaries and such.
Of the word person specifically.
Okay.
Prior to like 1850, I don't see a lot of that person stuff. 1850, 1855-ish seems to be when that started to occur, right? Now, keep in mind, the definition of the word nation pretty much gives you the fact that it's a person, right? So if we go to the Amnesty Coalition and we go to the definition of the word nation, right?
Yeah, I think it's handy that you have these definitions on your website, by the way.
Oh yeah, it'd be too hard to do these shows digging all this out from the original locations, right? So this comes from a book. I think the book is the Law of Nations or something like that. It's like international law.
No, it is Law of Nations. If it's I forget his first name, but Vattel.
Yeah. An independent body politic, a society of men united together for the purpose of promoting their mutual safety and advantage by the joint efforts of their combined strength. But every combination of men who govern themselves independently of all others will not be considered a nation. A body of pirates, for example, who govern themselves are not a nation. To constitute a nation, another ingredient is required. The body thus formed must respect other nations in general and each of their members in particular. Such a society has her affairs and her interests. She deliberates and takes resolutions in common, thus becoming a moral person who possesses an understanding and will peculiar to herself and is susceptible of obligations and rights. So as you see near the end, he starts saying she, thus becoming a moral person who possesses it, she deliberates and takes resolutions in common, right? So it's this idea that this idea
are
that
they referring to the nation as a she?
Yes.
Okay.
So the idea that a group can be a person, I don't really consider that to be the craziest thing in the world. I don't necessarily even think that's false or untrue. I think that the clarity of the definitions and usages of the terminology of the words could improve dramatically, and the transparency, that's seriously where the issue is.
It's cool that you have the definition from the Law of Nations, because the Law of Nations came out, looking it up, it was 1758, because I didn't know the exact date. And that puts us right before the formation of the country of the United States of America. And the founding fathers definitely drew upon the Law of Nations, and the Law of Nations was kind of considered something that was agreed upon by the rest of the governments and nations around the world at the time as a resource that can be cited.
Yes.
And it was a very respectable document. People can download that for free if you just want to look it up, the Law of Nations.
Yeah, it's the basis of everything we have today. Basically, if you want to boil everything down in a nutshell, the elite operate at that level, and then they kind of trick everyone else into operating at the domestic level. So
by becoming by taking on the U.S. citizenship.
Yeah. The elite operate in international law, and the plebs or slaves or U.S. citizens operate at the domestic level.
Under statute law, under Roman civil law, under corpus juris.
Yeah, however you want to say it.
Yeah.
However you want to say it, right? But the bottom line is international law is available for anyone who wants to go there.
Now, were you learning that because of the what you're doing with the amnesty and formation of your own nation? Because this sounds like when I
Yes.
had mentioned to you before, and I'm going to re-upload the videos with David Williams, who's from the Dominion of Melchizedek, that micronation, because he uses the right of self-determination, which is international law recognized by, I don't like it's not like I'm saying it's a good thing, but recognized by the UN.
Well, it's really simple when it comes to the United States. Other countries may be a little bit different, but I doubt it. I think most countries are going to have all the same terminology. We have two major aspects that need to be looked at in order to understand how to open up your own nation. Opening up your own nation is the easiest goddamn thing in the world. It's easier than taking a fucking nap, literally.
But being recognized by other nations is the other thing, because
it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant.
Are you familiar though just with the nation Liberland?
I think vaguely.
They claimed an unclaimable territory between Croatia and Serbia, if I understand it, and neither nation was allowed to technically claim it because it would have caused a war. So these guys decided to claim it, and I'm not sure exactly what's going on with it, but it supposedly does exist.
Yeah, the idea of the definition of nationality is based off of allegiance. You don't need land or a location in space to pledge allegiance. Allegiance is based off of goals, intentions, right? So I have a whole section on the Amnesty Coalition that I recently wrote about this, because this was also a bit of a recent breakthrough. Yeah. So does the Amnesty Coalition own or intend on owning land? No, as far as the research has gone, owning land is not a requirement of having your own nation. An excellent example of a legal nation that does not possess any land would be the Sovereign or Military Order of Malta. And this is like a 900-plus-year-old organization that does not have any land. They issue diplomatic license plates, passports, etc., without having any land at all. This is simply proof that land is not required to be your own nation. And then I say here, think about it. Why would you need land in order to pledge allegiance to something? That makes no sense. You pledge allegiance to an idea or to a goal or an intention, not to a location. I think this is new. I just wrote this. I think this is pretty much key right here. And also in the definition of the word nation, you don't see location. If you look up a lot of different definitions of the word nation, you'll see oftentimes inhabits a specific location. But keep in mind, those definitions are from the 17 or 1800s, not the internet. Okay.
Okay.
So from my, if someone wants to challenge me in a court of law, that'll be one hell of a long court case.
Are there other organizations similar to the Order of Malta that you know of that have the same type of situation going on where they're able to be recognized as a nation without land?
No, I kind of latched onto this one because I was so blown away by it. I don't see the need in trying to go and finding another one. I'm sure I could if I tried, but I haven't tried.
Okay, now I was just curious.
I haven't even, this is plenty for me. This is a very, very old organization. We're talking, I think this stems all the way back to like the Knights Templar or something. This is a very, very old organization. Okay. So 18 USC 11 gives us the clarity of this. And you see that in the media and stuff too. Unrecognized micronation or unrecognized nation. Well, gee, I'm sure I'm glad that you guys are interested in such irrelevant bullshit. Because the thing is that 18 USC 11 states the term foreign government includes any government, faction, or body of insurgents within a country with which the United States is at peace, irrespective of recognition by the United States. So you got to think, like, for example, Dave Errett, who creates our diplomatic license plates, he just created these diplomatic identification cards, and we're actually in the process of getting these completed, and then we'll get these issued. People can buy these. These right here, you can kind of see it on the screen there. I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, hold on one second. I'm trying to do that. Yeah, I was on another screen. I'm going to solo you out here in a second. Here we go. Okay, so but that's the thing. So Liberland, the Dominion and McKeesel deck, they offer passports. You can get a passport from them, but you cannot use that passport to travel. Like no airport's going to recognize it. How do you get into that position where you have recognition through TSA and being able to enter into other countries with that passport?
Well,
I'm not trying to like put you on the spot here. I'm just curious about how these things can officially actually be something that can be utilized so that we can.
Well, you can utilize them. Like, for example, I know people who have used the Slojamistan passport, this one here, and he says don't do it. And I've known people who do it and they get through at like Mexico and stuff like that. And then I've had people tell me, oh, Mexico doesn't give a fuck about anybody. You can hand them like a fucking piece of paper that says passport and it's not even spelled right and they'd accept it. So I've, those are like haters and stuff, which right. It could be true. I don't know all these things. People expect me to know everything under the sun, moon, and stars. Newsflash, shocker. I don't know everything about everything. Okay. If I did,
same here.
I would be fucking, touch healing and turning wine into water and water into wine and all this other shit. I don't do that. So people fucking forget.
But that's where conversations like this, conversations you have, you being open-minded enough to listen to other people and realize that, hey, there may be some information that I wasn't aware of that you can add to your equation. As long as you're constantly in that learning process and don't think that you know everything, because it's obviously.
Yeah, check this out. So if I pull out my passport card right now, and boy,
like your passport, are you
this is my personal fucking passport card right here
from the States.
From So we're going to read the back of this together. Valid for domestic air travel, international land and sea travel between the U.S., Canada, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Bermuda. Not valid for international air travel.
Yeah, because you have to have the other passport, which is not a card; it's a book. Yeah.
So let me ask you a question: is this a book or a card?
It looks like a card to me.
Thank you. So
it could have multiple pages. I don't know. You could have put together a micro book, knowing you.
No. So the thing is that this, even if it, this wouldn't be good for more than what this would be good for anyways. So the maximum this could possibly be good for would be valid for domestic air travel, international land and sea travel. Now keep in mind, it doesn't say air. International land and sea travel between the U.S., Canada, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Bermuda, not valid for international air travel. So that would be the maximum of what this could possibly be in relation to the United States.
And
whereas
I believe
this is different. This is the actual book, right?
Right.
Slojamistan, right? So this you could go and try to do the international stuff if you wanted to.
Well, that's the same. Liberland has those books. I think the Dominion Melchizedek has those books, not the cards. And again, situations just not recognized by legal authorities in an airport.
Yeah, so start suing people. I don't know. I mean, you start suing people, and now you're in a conversation, and now you can figure it out. I don't know. I don't know what else to really say. The definition in Title 8 of a person is an individual or an organization. So the fact that your nation is an organization means that as per Title 8, 8 USC 1101 subsection A28, which is the definition of the word organization. It is an organization, and an organization is has to do nothing more than as a person, it has to declare allegiance to the United States, and then at that point, it becomes able to get a U.S. passport. So no one's ever challenged this, to my knowledge.
And I'm just asking questions. I'm not expecting you to know everything here, and I don't know everything. One thing that I did want to mention as you're talking about and reading the back of the passport card is that, from my understanding, with the real IDs, that I believe it's the Department of Motor Vehicles in each state is offering. I believe those are supposed to have the same functionality.
Though that whole thing, that's some satanic shit, bro. What they're trying to do is they're trying to get everyone to get rid of their passports and take on driver's licenses. That's a degradation campaign. I mean, for whatever reason, I don't know why the passports are just badass, and like you show anyone a passport and you're just like the shit, and it's just like the most amazing thing ever. Even though I'm pretty sure it's just under the sole proprietorship, for whatever reason, the passport is just amazing. Whereas you show anyone a driver's license and they could just beat you and do anything they want and take all your shit. So I think the whole real ID thing is to try to get rid of the passport entirely.
Which would make sense because, I mean, especially when you have a lot of people talking about the passport card, because when people are talking about the 4 and 5 star cards or passports, what they're referring to is the card, not the book.
Yeah.
And maybe that potentially, because it doesn't seem as if the governments want this information to be available and people to free themselves from their jurisdictional control, because ultimately I believe that would be what would happen, is we would not be under their jurisdictional control. And as long as you're not causing harm, there's nothing really to worry about as far as like obeying local laws and such. I mean, that's like the whole idea with somebody who has diplomat plates that are like a son of a politician or whatever the case might be. A lot of those people aren't allowed to be held because they're not under the jurisdiction. So depending on what they do, a lot of those people seem to get out of trouble.
Well, it's the same thing we do. We issue just diplomatic plates and we get out of all sorts of trouble and everything else. Because if you go back to my screen share,
okay,
right here, let me know when you're there.
Yeah, I'm here.
18 USC 11, right? Irrespective of recognition by the United States. So the thing is that the term foreign government
is not recognized by the United States.
It doesn't. It's an irrelevant. It's like, okay, so I roll into your mechanic shop and I say, hey, my engine's making a bit of noise and it's running kind of rough. I need you to look at it. And the mechanic looks at you and he goes, okay, what did you have for breakfast this morning?
Yeah, you're like, well, what is it? What I had to eat had to do with this?
So that's the same feeling you just had when I just brought that up. It's the same feeling you should have when people say anything about recognition about any sort of nation or micronation. It's irrelevant.
Okay.
It's completely irrelevant. The news uses that. They say recognition. It's you rolled in, you asked to get your engine fixed. The mechanic asked what you had for breakfast this morning.
Right. It's just a little invasive. You don't need that information. I get what you're saying, man. I totally get what you're saying. I like the way that you explain
the response would be, okay, I understand that maybe you have some difficulty involving the faculty of logic involving with your thinking. It's not really my issue. Thank you very much for, I suppose, sharing with me your interest and desire to delve into irrelevant, time-wasting pieces of information or questions, but I'm not going to be involving myself in that personally. So have fun with that. That would be my response, something like that. Right.
Okay. I know we went off on a complete tangent. You were talking about that 1872, if I remember the date correctly, and then you were going to go into the slaughterhouse cases.
Well, yeah, and we're in the middle of that too. But here, hold on a second. And then we have here 8 USC 1101 subsection A14. This comes from a lot of the passport stuff too. The term foreign state includes outlying possessions of a foreign state, but self-governing dominions or territories under mandate or trusteeship shall be regarded as separate foreign states. This is really, really, really fucking crazy for anyone that actually understands this.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask you. Can you kind of break down what you just read in that?
Anything in a trust is a foreign state.
That's kind of what I was starting to think when I saw the trusteeship. So creating now, is it a specific type of trust?
No.
Okay.
A trust is, in its most basic term, a contract. So if you
But
want to get
there's
really crazy, you can say the term term foreign state includes outlying possessions of a foreign state, but self-governing locations or groups under any sort of private contract shall be regarded as separate foreign states.
not all trusts are private contracts. So would you have to have a correct private contract version of it?
Well, okay. Yeah, I mean, we can get into that, I guess. 42.
I mean, I don't want to get into like tangents and not
No,
come
that's all right.
back.
42,
I'm just,
42
these are just
USA.
things that I'm thinking people would
So
be
what
asking.
makes a trust domestic versus foreign? We can get into that, which is like 9 billion pages. Or we can just go to the definition of a United States citizen and read subsection A. We've got it all figured out. United States citizen means any individual who is a citizen of the United States by law, birth, or naturalization. So as far as I'm concerned, any trust that's not involved with the United States by law, birth, or naturalization would be foreign. Any trust that was involved with the United States via law, birth, or naturalization would be domestic, right? So what is law? Law is just contract. So if your trust has a business license, it would be a United States citizen because it's a citizen of the United States by law. If your trust was born through some sort of United States medium, meaning you opened up a trust through the state or through the federal government, it would be a United States citizen because through birth, because it's a person, right? And then naturalization means that, it's been naturalized as per 8 USC 1101 subsection A23. What is the definition of naturalization? 8 USC 1101 subsection A23. It's one of the most important definitions of everything I teach is the definition of the term naturalization. The term naturalization means the conferring of nationality of a state upon a person after birth by any means whatsoever. So as long as you're not saying that the trust is in or located in or in the location of some place like the federal enclave called State of California, then you wouldn't have this issue here, right? So as far as I'm concerned, this is a really, really clear way to determine between what's a domestic trust versus what's a foreign trust, in my opinion.
Okay. Now, when you use the term foreign and domestic trust, does that foreign also mean private, domestic mean public, or nothing to the effect?
Yes, but domestic and foreign is their terminology. A lot of how I speak is
Or does it mean?
their
But that's what
terminology.
But does in our real words? Because I know the word magic shit going on. I'm a
Well,
big
keep
fan of
in
how
mind, domestic and foreign are both relative terms. Domestic to what? Foreign to what? By themselves, they don't mean anything.
Okay, makes
foreign
sense.
trust. Okay, great. Foreign to what?
Right. What is it foreign
to Indonesia? You see, foreign to what? Foreign to the Pacific Ocean?
Right.
You see? So you have to
Okay.
start to understand the definition of the words to understand the terminology, because the word foreign all by itself means nothing. Foreign trust to United States. Okay, good. But now you got to make sure you understand what United States means. As long as you understand what United States means, you can understand the term foreign trust to the United States. So a trust in California would be a foreign trust to United States, according to the legal definition.
Okay.
A trust in Hawaii would not be a foreign trust. It would actually be a domestic trust in accordance to what the definition of United States is, because Hawaii is a U.S. territory, as far as I can tell.
I thought it technically was made into a state, wasn't it?
No, I've gone down this rabbit hole a bit recently, and I don't think so.
Because I was wondering too, like how the territorial stuff works. When people like to use the term American national, I believe that kind of relates back to someone who's not a citizen, someone who, like, I think the Samoan Islands or something.
American Samoa. Yeah, I fucked that up for a long time. We can get into that a little bit later.
Okay.
But basically, well, we can get into it right now. So 28. So I just had this happen in a case with the SBA, the DOJ attorneys. I filed a case against the Small Business Administration.
Okay.
In state court, and the DOJ attorneys had it removed to federal court using this statute. A civil action or criminal prosecution that is commenced in a state court and that is against or directed to any of the following may be removed by them to the district court of the United States for the district and division embracing the place wherein it is pending, right? And then it says here the United States or any agency or officer thereof, right? So if you sue the United States or any of its agencies or officers, they're allowed to move it to federal court if it's in a state court, right? And then we're fighting about that. And I went down and I found this definition of the term state court includes the Superior Court of the District of Columbia, a court of a United States territory or insular possession, and a tribal court, right?
Tribal meaning like on nations, like Native American lands.
Yeah, but it has to be federally registered.
I think most of them are at this point.
So if they're not federally registered, then they wouldn't be included in that definition, which is a little bit of a, in my opinion, that's a little bit of a unclarity. There's a little bit of unclarity there.
So they moved your case.
It's not just any tribal court. It's only federally registered tribal courts. Unfederally registered tribal courts wouldn't fit under 28 USC 1442, but they don't put that there. They just say tribal courts, which is, I think, stupid. They should say federally registered tribal courts.
That's because it's ambiguous. It makes you think all tribal courts,
right? So I filed this. This is a motion to void the judgment as well as the original movement, right? And I say here in 28 USC 1442A, the definition is the following: Superior Court, Court of the United States Territory, Court, a tribal court. State of California is not any of these following items, right? Examples of a territory or insular possession of the United States would be Guam, American Samoa, Wake Island, Midway Island, Johnston Atoll, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, etc. It would not include the state called State of California, right? And we get into this particular Supreme Court case from 1894. The last line is the most important part. The laws of Congress in respect to these matters do not extend into the territorial limits of the states, but have force only in the District of Columbia and other places that are within the exclusive jurisdiction of the national government, right? So this goes into what we've seen before in UCC 9-307, which I showed you, I'm sure, last time on the show, where we have the location of the United States. The United States is located in the District of Columbia. You've seen this before, right?
Well, yeah. Didn't you recently put out like a FOIA request for the location?
Yeah, they say we don't have it or we can't figure out what you're trying to do, and then I've gone to the mayor's office on an appeal, and then they're still confused as to what I want. So I tried to kind of clean that up, but that's not really going anywhere currently. It's a continuing process of trying to figure out where in the hell the United States actually is. I don't know if I'll ever find out, to be honest with you. And then we have 4 USC 71, which is also pretty telling in terms of where the United States is located. All that part of the territory of the United States included within the present limits of the District of Columbia shall be the permanent seat of government of the United States. But that gets a little bit interesting too. So Washington, D.C., 51st state. We have this whole website where Washington, D.C. is trying to become the 51st state of the union, right?
Right, but I don't think they legally or lawfully can.
No, it's physically impossible unless they just... No one knows any of this to such a vast.
They would have to move the location of the federal government in that sense, I would expect.
No, they would have to abandon the federal government entirely. There would be no federal government.
Okay.
So I was looking at this. This is pretty wild. This blew my mind. This is actually what I put in the FOIA request that I sent in, right? Let's see here.
See, also, I think that the territory of Washington, D.C. was extended out, not just with like the labor code, but I mean, everything is broken into federal districts. And if you go to a federal courthouse in your local area, you are in Washington, D.C.
Yes. Well, you're in a federal enclave. You're in a federal enclave that's exercised in the District of Columbia, which is 4 USC 72. So you're in a federal enclave. All offices attached to the seat of government shall be exercised in the District of Columbia and not elsewhere. except as otherwise expressly provided by law. So you aren't, I kind of had a misnomer on that too. You aren't in Washington, D.C. That location is exercised as though it's in Washington.
So it's under the jurisdiction of Washington, D.C.
It's under the exclusive territorial jurisdiction. Yes.
Okay, that makes and that when I'm wondering, is that partially how we got this federal spread out where DC's territory got expanded, like almost as if the entirety of the United States is the expansion of the District of Columbia.
Well, yeah, that's because you go to
That's how we have states being corporations and such, and incorporating with the federal government.
Well, yeah, if you go to my website and then you go down to where my Dun and Bradstreet thing is, right? So we have how many constitutions are there for California? 2. One from 1849 and one from 1879 after the 14th Amendment. Makes perfect sense.
Are all states that were created during that time period the same situation?
Some states have a whole bunch, like Texas has like 5 or 6 different constitutions. Now, keep in mind, the definition of the word constitution is like you can only have one per state. So one state does not have 2 constitutions. This is false information. California has had 2 constitutions. To translate this into truth, into English, is there are 2 states that are both called California. One's called State California or State of California, and the other one's called State of California.
Right.
So there are 2 states. One state is governed by this document from 1849. The other state is governed by this document from 1879, right? We go to Dun & Bradstreet, we look up State of California. It's a business, so it's got to be the 1879 version, because the only way that a state could be a business is because it's got to be after the 14th Amendment, all right?
Okay.
So we're going to go down and we're going to find where is this business state called State of California located.
State capital, Sacramento, California.
It tells you right here. So this green area is State of California. So
that's the geographical landmass known as the State of California.
When you write on documents and stuff like that, and you write that you are a resident, which means a foreign temporary visitor in a location for some sort of business or recreational purposes. If you start looking up the definition of the word resident, that's why you never see the word domicile. Everything's resident, because
the resident entraps you in a jurisdiction.
It entraps you as a foreigner in a foreign land. You're the foreigner,
right? Which goes back to what was it? The acts of the I'm trading with the enemy, where it got extended out.
Well, I'm not so sure, because Joe Lustica says the Buck Act of 1940. I've heard a few different things. I don't have that totally nailed down for you. The Buck Act made it to where federal employees can be taxed if they're working in enclaves in the states,
which is federal buildings or such.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that would make a little more sense to me, because if this is State of California, then the people who work here would be a federal enclave, and the people who work here should be taxed as though they're in the District of Columbia. So that makes sense to me, but I haven't fully nailed that down yet. So we go back to naturalization. Means the conferring of nationality of a state upon a person after birth by any means whatsoever. You say State of California. You don't specify which one. They assume you're talking about this one. So basically, you have this gigantic state called California, this whole thing, right? And almost everyone here lives here.
Yeah. But people think otherwise and assume
they think they live here, but they don't live here. I live here because I'm very, 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 very specific about it. I'm one of probably, I don't know, maybe 100, 200, 300, just several hundred people.
You live in California proper. You don't live in that tiny jurisdiction.
I live in 1849. I don't live in 1879. This is 1879. You're looking at 1879 right now.
Right. which is in a sense, the federal takeover to me of the United States government.
Yes.
And that's when all the trickery began. And then you have a plethora of things that take place. I mean, I feel like this was done in a deceitful manner. It wasn't as if the 14th Amendment was created to give a status to black people, and there was no intention beyond that.
Well,
It feels like there had to be some intention.
Now,
okay.
If you read what Mr. Miller, Freeman Miller SCOTUS 1871, Samuel Freeman Miller.
Beautiful middle name, by the way.
Yeah. So he actually uses the word Freeman in the Slaughterhouse case's opinion. He says Freeman of the Union. His middle name was fucking Freeman, right? So he made this very clear. If you read the opinion, I really don't think these guys are trying to do anything more than just figure out all this craziness. The whole country was flipped on its head because you got all these released African slaves and they don't have any citizenship. So now what? And everyone was just freaking out and they were just trying to figure it out. You can read, I mean, go read the opinion. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Well, I mean, then somewhere down the line, somebody realized the loophole they could take advantage of. And that's when you've seen the creation of the Federal Reserve, the creation of the IRS, which both were not constitutional and very questionable. Then we can lead into the Great Depression, and 1933 was kind of the big seal of the deal.
Well, no, 71. Like I said, 71 is the BC AD. The 33 is big, and 1913 is big, and 1971 is big, and we've got a lot of big things. I mean, even the Patriot Act in 9/11 was kind of big. I mean, there's a lot of big things, right? But the big dog, the big daddy, the mother mama is 1871, because 1871 is also the Organic Act when the District of Columbia and the public school system was born. The public school system was the cookie, the benefit that was offered with the Organic Act of 1871.
Okay, that makes sense.
So
I did not know. I didn't know that in a sense, public education was starting at that point. It was like offering.
That was the carrot.
Offering benefits. Because you have to have benefits.
Yes. So the benefit during that time period for the District of Columbia was the public school system. The benefit for the 14th Amendment was all the African slaves now had citizenship. That was the benefit, right? So, for example, on my law firm, what states/states do you work in? Lowercase states means unincorporated states, and uppercase states means incorporated states. This is as per how they word things. It's not I didn't make this up, right? So this is a bit of a complex question because we first need to explore what is a state/state. For example, almost no one realizes the definition for the term United States is the following: the District of Columbia and its territories/territories, lowercase t if they are not incorporated, and uppercase T if they are incorporated, and possessions. This would be all of the following states: District of Columbia, Alaska, Hawaii, American Samoa, Guam, Northern Mariana Islands, Puerto Rico, U.S. Virgin Islands, Baker Island, Howland Island, Jarvis Island, Johnston Atoll, Kingman Reef, Midway Atoll, Navassa Island, Palmyra Atoll, and Wake Island. It could also possibly include Bajo Nuevo Bank and Serenila Bank. These are disputed territories. The other 48 states, which is lowercase, by the way, of the main landmass of what people normally think of when they think of the United States, are not a part of the typical legal definition of United States because they're not under the exclusive jurisdiction of the national government. This is made crystal clear in Caja v. U.S. 1894. Each and every one of the above listed states or states are, quote, attached to the seat of government, end quote, and thus are, quote, exercised in the District of Columbia, end quote, in accordance with 4 U.S.C. 72, which we saw earlier. The United States is, quote, located in the District of Columbia, end quote, in accordance with 4 U.S.C. 71 and UCC 9-307 subsection H. I have tried to locate the exact coordinates of this location within the bounds of the District of Columbia by using FOIA requests and have not been successful so far. So its exact location coordinates are unknown. The various U.S. territories/territories and insular possessions are not sovereign aspects, creating a large map sector Like what you think of when you think of the 48 states of the Union, they are possessions, sort of like how you would think of your car or something like that. So that's why the United States, when explicitly described in 4 U.S.C. 71 and UCC 9-307 subsection H, is only and exclusively described as being within the territorial boundaries of the District of Columbia. The possessions are not thought of as being the actual landmass known as the United States. So if you say United States, technically, I've never been there. I've never visited the United States. I've never traveled through the United States. I've never even had a connecting flight in any area that would be classified as part of the United States. That includes Alaska and Hawaii.
Especially if you don't know where it's at.
Yeah, I've domiciled in the following states of the Union in my life: Indiana, Illinois, Florida, New York, and California. This does not include the incorporated federal enclaves of state of Indiana, state of Illinois, state of Florida, state of New York, or state of California. And that's the truth.
You know, while you're talking about some of this stuff, and you mentioned 1871 in public education, and then you started talking about capitalization, you know, like the real estate being not capitalized in any form. It reminds me of something I was taught in English class, which I had to look back up, which was capitalized persons, places, and things.
Proper nouns versus common nouns.
Yeah, that's what we were taught. So we were taught from children to think of California as a uppercase C.
Well, the both versions are uppercase C. You're talking about the S. You're talking about the S for state.
State. So it's not the actual California itself being.
No, the word state is typically uppercase or lowercase. You see that in the USC as well. You see that in the
No, and I have noticed that. I just, the way that you had written it out, it was lowercase S T-A-T-E. So I assumed it was California with like a lowercase C.
No, so even lowercase s would still be capital C.
Okay. So you always do capitalize persons, places, and things then. So they were correct. They weren't tricking us into some word magic trickery.
Well, state of California, lowercase s, versus state of California, uppercase s, are two totally different things.
Right.
So we see here on the Washington, D.C., they're trying to make the Washington, D.C. the 51st state. This is pretty telling. This is pretty shocking. This is when I started filing FOIA requests. If D.C. becomes the 51st state, what will happen to the federal seat of government, monuments, and museums? Look at this first few words. This area is unpopulated. So what are they telling you? They're telling you that inside of Washington, D.C., there's this area which is the federal seat of government. That federal seat of government's legal name as a person is called United States. Where is this federal seat of government, otherwise known as United States, located? It's located in an area which is unpopulated. This got me really, really.
Yeah, because
my
obviously
antennas were going crazy.
I'm sure I'm from the Northern Virginia area, which is right outside of the Washington, D.C. area. And I know for a fact that people that the domicile there, they reside, whatever you want to say. They live in that area. I know.
Well, what's funny is you can't legally domicile in Washington, D.C. This is actually pretty creepy.
You can only reside.
I've never ever everything I've ever seen is reside, except one thing and one thing only. Guess what that one thing is?
I'm curious.
The Federal Bar Association. This was pretty shocking. Let me see if I can find this. Let me see if I can find this.
That's another can of worms, the bar thing.
Yeah, well, check this out. I found this. There's only one thing I've ever seen that uses the word domicile when talking about the United States or the District of Columbia. And you can see it right here, if they still have it here. So this is 36 USC 70501, subsection B. Subsection A, actually, let's start there. Federal Charter. The foundation of the Federal Bar Association, in this chapter, it's just called the corporation, is a federally chartered corporation. place of incorporation and domicile. The corporation is declared to be incorporated and domiciled in the District of Columbia. To my knowledge, I have never, ever seen anything or anyone anywhere where they use the term domicile and District of Columbia in the same sector. So at this point, which is February 21st, 2025 at 4:21 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I currently, according to current research, believe the only thing truly domiciled in the District of Columbia is, quote, the corporation.
Yeah, but it'd be good to know, like, how when you look up the state of California, how you're finding that particular location. You're not finding that for the District of Columbia, and you're not even getting an answer when you do the FOIA request. They act as if there's something wrong with you.
Well, they act like they just don't, like they're just confused. I mean, they're just very confused, which I understand. So this is just an interesting side point. But going back to this area is unpopulated. So, you know, it's an unpopulated area.
Referring to the District of Columbia specifically, right?
Referring to United States, which is
Referring to
inside the
United
District of
States.
Columbia.
Okay.
That's what I've been trying to figure out. So we know where District of Columbia is. If you look up the history on it, they went around and they placed these little concrete pillar things, and they created this whole thing. You can look up all the information about the District of Columbia and how Virginia and the other states ceded their land. And then there was this whole like zoning committee that went around and they put these things in the ground. They're probably still there to this day, or maybe they're not. And they're these little, like, you know, there's like like pictures of people hammering, these concrete zoning pillars and all this stuff. Right? That's easy. I can figure that out. I'm trying to figure out where Washington, D.C. is. I'm trying to figure out where within the confines of Washington, D.C., there is an unpopulated area called United States. I want to know the exact coordinates of that area. And that's what no one will tell me.
I wonder if all the monuments are, I mean, like if there's together, how many residences are close to the monument, if there's like a specific like area like within the monuments, because I know nobody lives at the reflection pool, and there are area like blocks and such where no one technically lives.
There's even an island. Check this out. Island in Washington, D.C. I think it's called Goose Island.
Yeah, I think it was brought up recently with that crash, if I'm not mistaken.
Island in Washington, D.C. that is uninhabited.
And that's where you were thinking there was a geographical
Little
location,
island.
right?
Wait,
because I think it was I'm not sure. Are you familiar with the channel Justinian Deception? By any chance?
That sounds familiar.
Romley Stewart, Australian guys. Well, they had talked about the geographical location of Australia, because they talk about Australia itself being Terra Australis, which is different than where the actual, it's the same thing. It's like an uninhabited island.
Yeah. So little island, here's the coordinates right here. So let's say, for example, little island is where United States is located.
Right, the geographical location of the United States.
Then the answer to my FOIA request would be this right here.
And that's what you were expecting.
38.891 north, comma, space 770059 west. If they would have sent me this, that would have been an answer to my FOIA request. But the thing is, I don't know if Little Island is where United States is located. I don't know. How many? So it says here, this is the 6th largest island in the District of Columbia. Okay.
Now, I think like around the White.
How many uninhabited islands are there in the District of Columbia?
Several. Heritage, Kingman. It doesn't even list Goose, though, does it?
See here.
No, you see, like where the museums are, the White House, the Capitol building, there is no residences. There may be hotels, but that's not technically a residence.
No, the hotels, everything's a residence. Everything is a residence.
Well, I mean, there wouldn't be any people that would be inhabiting it in that sense, though.
Well, yeah, but the term resident means temporary visitor for business or recreational purposes.
Okay.
So they're all residents. And then they created this term permanent resident, which is just as bad as the term sovereign citizen. You cannot be a permanent resident.
A permanent visitor, you mean?
It's permanent visitor.
Yeah.
It's the stupidest fucking thing in the world. Permanent resident makes me laugh every time I hear it. I mean, it's like sovereign citizen. It's the same idea. It's a very red blue. You know, it's the reddest blue I've ever seen in my life. It's the fattest skinny man I've ever seen in my life. It's the most motorcycle car. It's the most motorcycle-y. It's the most ham sandwichy car I've ever seen in my life. You say, well, what the fuck? You know what I mean? Like, that's permanent resident is the stupidest fucking thing in the world. That's just pure, insane, stupid, fucktard, retard.
Yeah, because I mean, I just
40 IQ, Down syndrome, can't feed yourself, shit your pants, wear diapers all day, adult diapers.
I'm wondering if whoever created the term knew that someday one person like you in the world was just going to just like go off on a complete thing about this. Somebody realized that, hey, I created something that's a complete oxymoron and people are going to use this as regular language. And then someone like you comes around setting the record straight, Mr. Pickleman.
Yeah. So I went off on a whole thing on this court case about the U.S. territories and how they're subnational administrative divisions, independent territories overseen by the federal government. They're not the states. They're not the District of Columbia. They're basically possessions, just like they say. They're possessions, right? There's 5 inhabited ones: American Samoa, Guam, Northern Mariana Islands, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. And then there's several uninhabited. I believe there's 9 uninhabited ones. And then U.S. insular possessions, it's almost saying the same thing. It's a little bit different term, but it's kind of the same thing. You can even see that in 42 U.S.C. 5204 subsection 1. American Samoa, the Federated States of Micronesia, which it has the Northern Mariana Islands included in that. So that's also not even that far from what we've already said. Guam, the Marshall Islands, the Northern Mariana Islands, the Trust Territory of the Pacific Islands, and the Virgin Islands, right? This is also interesting here. Yeah, I was going to say, yeah. So this also gives you a hint.
If that's a bunch of small nations that have kind of come together to form a pact,
in a trust.
Sort of.
Yeah. So that also comes back to what we saw earlier in the definition of foreign state. So if they have this location way off in the middle of nowhere, full of islands, and it's under a trust, and it becomes a possession, well, let's reread 8 U.S.C. 1101 subsection A14. The term foreign state includes outlying possessions of a foreign state, but self-governing dominions or territories under mandate or trusteeship shall be regarded as separate foreign states. Want to have your own foreign state? Open up a trust. How do you open up a trust? It's just a contract. Write a contract, put some coordinates on it, bang, you've got yourself a foreign state, you've got yourself a nation. 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
Very interesting.
5 fucking minutes. Okay? So that's where we start getting into this, the term state court. What are they saying? They're saying all that shit that I had listed on my website, you know, Atoll, Palmyra Atoll, U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam, Puerto Rico, all that stuff. You file a lawsuit.
So in that case,
if you file a lawsuit in American Samoa, they can move it to federal court because it would fall under the definition of a state court. If you file a lawsuit in a federally registered tribal area, they can remove and the defendant is United States or one of its agencies or officers. They can remove it to federal court using 28 U.S.C. 1442. If you file in now, the District of Columbia is kind of interesting. We start getting into, if we go back to that Q&A, right? FAQ District of Columbia.
With your case, you filed it on a state level, but they're trying to move it to the federal, and you're trying to say they have no.
They did move it to the federal, and I am moving it back.
Okay.
What
would be the correct term? They didn't have what the correct legal
It's not under. It's they used 28 USC 1442, and state of California has nothing to do with 28 USC 1442.
Okay.
It's like I filed a case in fucking Norway, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna remove it to the District of Columbia." No, you aren't, motherfucker. The fuck. So if we go back to this FAQ, state of Washington, D.C., 51st state, what is Washington? This is pretty interesting, right? Washington, D.C. isn't a state, it's a district. D.C. stands for District of Columbia. Its creation comes directly from the U.S. Constitution, which provides that the district not exceeding 10 miles square, which was probably designed originally to prevent what we see today, which is kind of crazy, right? Would become the seat of government of the United States, right? Congress established the federal district in 1790, which is true, to serve as a nation capital. It wasn't in the location it's in now. It was in like back in the day, like in Pennsylvania and shit like that. Like back in the day when all the good old boys would get together and talk about shit in Pennsylvania. I believe that was the original location of the nation's capital. And then it moved around, and then it became Washington, D.C. after the Organic
it
Act
was
of
Philadelphia,
1871.
then Lancaster.
Philadelphia, yeah.
And
So
I think it got moved to Lancaster from Philadelphia, and then it was moved again.
maybe I would need to do all, but the Constitution dictates that the federal district be under the jurisdiction of the U.S. Congress, right? Washington, D.C. operates as a state while also performing functions of a city and a county. This is where this is why people get confused, right?
Yeah.
So Washington, D.C. it's a federal zone, it's a state, it's a city, and it's a county.
Well, it's a district that acts as, they're saying it operates as a state. It operates as a city, and it operates as a county, but it's technically a district.
Yeah, so all the
So they're saying
we're
already acting like a state. Just make us a state. Is what they're saying.
Well, no, they're saying part of our district operates as a state. Because look, if we go back down to if DC becomes the 51st state, what will happen to the federal seat of government? This area is unpopulated, will be clearly mapped, and will remain in place under federal jurisdiction as the District of Columbia. So if the District of Columbia becomes a state,
then we'll know where the land mass known as the United States is finally.
Maybe.
Well, it's almost an admission right there, saying that, if DC becomes a state, then you'll know where the United States was.
And then it gets, well, that's also an excellent place to go back to 8 USC 1101, because if we go down and we look up the definition of the word state, all through the United States Code, it says that the definition of the word state includes the District of Columbia. So
they're already kind of, in a sense, including it as a state, but it's not listed as technically an official state.
United States. The term United States, except as otherwise expressly herein provided, when used in a geographical sense, means the continental United States, Alaska, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Guam, the Virgin Islands of the United States, and the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands.
But it doesn't
the definition of continental United States is the unknown location that I can't figure out for the life of me, that's inside of the District of Columbia.
Yeah, see, I've never heard this being said before, so this is just very interesting to me to think about this, and especially looking at that website.
Let's translate this into English. The term United States, except as otherwise expressly provided herein, when used in a geographical sense, means some unknown location, which could be the entire landmass of Washington, D.C., but we're just not sure. Alaska, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Guam, the Virgin Islands of the United States, and the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands. Now, that is the definition.
In order to include the states that are on the same landmass of North America, how would they list that?
Fuck.
Because the way that, if going back to where you were at, it helps me. So it was. What website where were you just at? Okay, so where it says continental United States, it's not saying continental United States of America, so it technically wouldn't include everything on the landmass of North America, because Alaska's detached, Hawaii is detached, Puerto
Well, hold
Rico's
on.
all these.
I have the answer for you. Let me I just need a moment. Joe Lustica sent me, he found this already. I think it's 8 CFR.
Because yeah, I mean, when it says means the continental United States, the United States is that unknown territory you're talking about. But to me, to include all the actual states like North Carolina, Virginia, California, and such, it would have to say the continent of the United States of America.
Here, I found
Continental.
it. Let me just, here, I found it. 8, here we go. 8 CFR 215.1. Here is your answer. And I couldn't find this for a long time. Joe Lustig actually found this. And it was crazy because I was hoping to find this one day. I mean, I'll go for like a year hoping to find something and not find it, and then all of a sudden it shows up. I mean, that happens all the time. Here is the term United States means the several states. Now you think to yourself, oh, the several states. You don't know what state's talking about.
Right.
The District of Columbia. So right there, all 5,000 alarm bells in your mind should be going, because the thing is that the District of Columbia ain't a fucking state. So when they say several states and they say District of Columbia in the same fucking sentence, they're not talking about the 48 states. They're not talking about California. It's a physical impossibility. They're talking about fucking California because the District of Columbia and California cannot be compared.
Yeah. Well, is there a definition of several states?
Well, we'll get into that in a second. Several states, the District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Guam, American Samoa, Swains Island, the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Island, beginning November 28, 2009, and all other territory and waters, continental and insular, subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, which is involving all of those unincorporated, weird, random islands and shit, right? Now, here it is. The term continental United States means the District of Columbia and the several states, except Alaska and Hawaii. So,
because Alaska and Hawaii are not attached. Those are only two states that are not attached to the landmass.
Those two are really, I don't know, bro. Those two are really confusing. I can't figure out what the fuck those two are.
But I'm still, the several states thing is getting me. Like, what are we supposed to understand several states supposed to mean? Like,
well, Guam is a state. American Samoa is a state. The Virgin Islands is a state. Guam is a state. Swan Islands is a state. Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana Islands is a state.
Right. So California, Nevada, New York, North Carolina, Florida are not included in several states, is what I'm starting to assume. Am I assuming correct?
Well, yeah, because they even say here, and the several states except Alaska and Hawaii. So I don't really understand. I mean, it's just, this is written in a way, obviously, to confuse the ever-loving fuck out of you. You can see that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Of the technical 50 states, Alaska and Hawaii are the only two that are not actually technically on the landmass of North America. They're detached.
Yeah, look at this. The term geographical part of the United States means the continental United States, Alaska, Hawaii, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Guam,
right, and they're going to
now hold on a second. They say Alaska and they say Hawaii. Why don't they keep going? California, Utah, Texas. Why don't they keep going? Why all of a sudden, these two, we're going to go ahead and just list them separately, but then everything else is we're just going to slap into this thing. No, that's not what they're saying.
Because in order for me to include the actual states of the continent, it would say the continental United States of America. It wouldn't say continental United States, because the United States itself is that small geographical territory in Washington, D.C. that we don't know where it exists.
4 USC 71, all that part of the territory of the United States included within the present limits of the District of Columbia shall be the permanent seat of government of the United States, UCC 9-307.
Right, but they would say, they
Subsection
being the government would say that they're including California when they say the several states of the United States, but it technically wouldn't include California because
that's correct.
But they're assuming that everybody thinks that that's what they're saying. That number one is saying all 48 geographical states that are on the landmass of North America in between Canada and Mexico.
That's correct. What does Kaha say about this? What does the Supreme Court say about this?
But you're saying it's not, and well, it's not you. It's what I'm reading.
The laws of Congress
Code.
in respect to those matters do not extend into the territorial limits of the states, but have force only in the District of Columbia and other places that are within the exclusive jurisdiction of the national government. What areas are in the exclusive jurisdiction of the national government? The continental United States, which means the District of Columbia and all of the U.S. territories and insular possessions, except Alaska and Hawaii. But then when they use the term geographical part of the United States, that one all of a sudden, for whatever reason, includes Alaska and Hawaii. Yeah. Puerto Rico, the U.S. Virgin Islands, Guam, American Samoa, Swain Islands, the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana.
It's just trickery, man. And it's like, where did the deceit come in, and why does it exist?
Because they wanted to centralize power in all of the 48 sovereign union states into the District of Columbia. They wanted to federalize.
Well, I also wonder too, if
sovereign nations.
If you're saying the two different constitutions of California, for example, represent, in a sense, a republic version and a corporate version. That's kind of the way I'm looking at it.
Or Republican, democratic. You could say it that way too, because the functionality of the District of Columbia is democratic. That's why you always hear them say about democratic this and democratic that and democratic this. And I laugh so hard because I'm not in a democracy. I'm in a republic. They're over there in a foreign country. They're in a democracy. Over here in my country, which is called 1849 California, we're in a republic.
So I'm wondering if the
which also goes back to the two parties.
If the democratic version becoming the capital S state of California puts it under the several states.
No, the several states,
because there is two different states
terminology. Yeah. But the only ones that they're referring to are the only ones they can refer to, which
are not the 48 geographical states in between Mexico and Canada.
1849, they are not talking about 1849 California anywhere. So what do? I naturalize myself into 1849 California. Now I am a foreigner in a foreign land. I can create a trust in 1849 California. It's a foreign trust. Look up in the Internal Revenue Code, Title 26. Foreign trusts don't even need to file a motherfucking tax return. I don't file a tax return at all for any of my trusts.
Well, a private trust wouldn't either, and there's lots of other trusts. I think like a charitable remainder trust, I don't believe you have to file taxes for.
Well, a lot of it's locational too.
True.
A lot of it's locational too, because jurisdiction is based off of location as well. Location law, again, as far as I'm concerned, it just goes back to the definition of a U.S. citizen. How does someone or something or some trust or some estate become a United States citizen? By law, which means contract, by birth, or naturalization. In my mind, anything that's not one of these three things is foreign. Anything that is one of these three things is domestic. That's kind of like, as of right now, February 21st, 4:44 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's kind of how I think about all this. People think, "Oh, I'm in California, so that must mean no. You're 950 billion miles away from anything even closely resembling anything that's anything. It's law,
by law, birth, and naturalization. Now, the naturalization comes in with someone from a foreign country comes here, they have a child, their child is now naturalized, but that's something that's being questioned, something that may be eliminated. I know that's something that Trump has talked about.
You can naturalize. What is the definition of naturalization? The conferring of nationality of a state upon a person, which is defined as an individual or an organization, after birth by any means whatsoever.
Right, but that, again, Trump is trying to get rid of that, and I think
he's not gonna get anything done with
that.
Yeah,
I think the courts are trying to contest it already.
Well, he's not gonna. He's gonna have a lot of success with a lot of things he's doing. That's not an area he's gonna have any success with. He is having success in a lot of things. He is doing a lot of cool things. He is a smart guy. He is having a lot of success. He is going to continue having a lot of success in a lot of areas. This whole citizen birthright thing is not an area he's going to with the way he's going right now, it's not going to go anywhere.
Yeah, I was curious about that, like how that might play out if it was something that was actually going to go
He doesn't
through.
get it. He's so far off the mark, it's unbelievable. So he's just not even close, and it's just never going to go anywhere.
Okay.
The 14th
Makes
Amendment is for released slaves of African descent or the descendants of those, but we've gone several.
But it's also employees and people who live in the District of Columbia would be considered.
Well,
US
yeah,
citizens.
but even that classification there'd have to be a business. There would have to be a sole proprietorship to hit that point.
Is that where the legal fiction kind of comes into play?
If there's no sole proprietorship, that wouldn't even exist. What you just said. You can't be an employee of the federal government without a sole proprietorship. The sole proprietorship is the employee. If there was no sole proprietorship, you couldn't even work for the government.
And that goes back
all the way to 1871.
Okay.
Again, AD and BC is 1871. 1872 is 1 AD.
Right, I get
1870 is 1 BC. Or I think that's
before corporation.
Before corporation and
after death of republic.
After district and before corporation. Yeah, we could do that. Okay.
That makes sense.
So you know, this is the checklist that I think of. If I'm going to make a trust, am I doing anything that would contract this thing into the United States Code? No. Good. Checkbox. Is this thing being born in the United States? Am I doing this through any sort of like United States or state or anything sort of whatever? And I went down this rabbit hole of, does notarizing the document in the state of California cause any sort of weird birth stuff? And I don't think so. I've gone down that rabbit hole already, so I don't think so. Because
that's like a legal stamp?
Well, I put on the goddamn trust indenture. Just because this thing is getting notarized does not mean it's naturalized or born in or contracted into any state. That doesn't make any sense. So I just put that in the trust indenture.
Okay.
It really doesn't make any sense. But, you know, the way law is, they can assume whatever they want. And if you don't combat their assumption, you lose. It becomes truth in law. So I figured, fuck it. I'll just put it in the goddamn trust indenture. That was my solution. I don't see how any of these things could be established through a notarization personally, but people are fucking crazy and dumb as fuck. So for me, the safe thing was just to put it in there, black and white, all caps in big bold letters. Nothing in this, including the notarization, means that this is being operated under the laws of the United States, born in the United States, or naturalized into any area of the United States at all.
Interesting. Something also I wanted to bring up, and it kind of leads back to the slaughterhouse cases. Pre 1933 case law seems to be like thrown out the door.
No, that's all false information. There's actually an axiom in law that the most powerful case law is the case law that's closest to whatever it is you're trying to argue, because the people who were there personally at that time had the greatest possible reality as to what was going on, the problems that were trying to be handled, and the solution that the case brought upon the country.
I can't give like examples, but I've heard people try to reference things like the slaughterhouse case and basically just get shot down, saying it's not that case law is not recognized, or I guess a new precedent had been set, because it's all based on precedent as well.
Well, if you say that about the Dred Scott decision, they would say the slaughterhouse cases overturns the Dred Scott decision, because they literally say in the slaughterhouse cases that it overturns the Dred Scott decision. So that kind of thing, I could definitely see someone using Dred Scott. And if you use Dred Scott, they will say Dred Scott was overturned by slaughterhouse. And these people are devil worship, blah, blah, blah. And it literally says, I think I can probably type it in here, overturn. The first observation we have to make on this clause is that it puts at rest both the questions which we stated to have been the subject of differences of opinion. It declares that persons may be citizens of the United States without regard to their citizenship of a particular state, and it overturns the Dred Scott decision by making all persons born within the United States and subjects to the jurisdiction citizens of the United States. They're literally, this terminology is the same exact terminology we see in the 14th Amendment. What's the first line of the 14th Amendment that people have been talking about since the day it was fucking released? Just the first fucking line. All persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state in which they reside. Now, keep in mind, what's the definition of the word United States? Nobody knows. What's the definition of the word subject? Nobody knows. What's the definition of the term reside? Nobody knows. So if we were to transform all of this using Kaha, we've got to go back to Kaha. Kaha says the exclusive jurisdiction is things like District of Columbia, right? Kaha. The laws of Congress in respect to those matters do not extend to the territorial limits of the states, but have force only in the District of Columbia and other places that are within the exclusive jurisdiction of the national government, which we already saw, things like federally registered tribes, U.S. territories, and insular possessions.
Okay.
All persons which can, so let's go even farther. Let's totally translate this. All individuals or organizations born or naturalized, which means the conferring of nationality of a state upon a person after birth by any means whatsoever, in the District of Columbia, Alaska, Hawaii, one of the U.S. territories or insular possessions, or federally registered tribal zones, and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the District of Columbia, a U.S. territory or insular possession, or a federally registered tribal area, and of the state wherein they temporarily are. They're not domiciling there, but they're temporarily there for some sort of recreational or business purposes. They really aren't supposed to be there, basically, kind of.
Right.
They're foreigners. They're foreigners to a state. When you use the word reside and you use the word state, it means foreigners to a state. Now, why would a U.S. citizen be a foreigner to a state? Because the state is a goddamn sovereign foreign fucking country from the United States. California is a sovereign. California might as well be fucking France.
Yeah, I mean, each state is its own nation, so we're technically like the United Nations, a confederation of nations.
So let's reread this again. All released slaves of African descent after the Civil War who were released via the 13th Amendment but had no citizenship yet, so we had to figure that out, born or naturalized into the District of Columbia or one of its U.S. territories or insular possessions or tribal zones that are federally registered and subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the District of Columbia and any U.S. territory or insular possession or federally registered tribal zones, and of the foreign state in which they happen to be a foreign visitor of, because they're really only supposed to be in the District of Columbia or one of the U.S. territories or insular possessions or a federally registered tribal zone. You wonder why this sentence has been the center of so much confusion for so fucking long. Since 1871, there's been a billion people have talked about this first fucking sentence. And I'm probably, not to be egotistical, but I'm probably the first motherfucker ever to understand it besides the fucking judges that made this shit.
Because it's combining legalese, and people are thinking that these are words that mean something. Like when I think of the word reside outside of a legal term, I think about where I live.
Yeah, it's not even close. When you use the word reside, you're a foreign bitch in a foreign land.
But that's the legal definition.
Yes.
That's not the real world definition of reside. That's where the trickery begins. That's where that's another level of trickery. I know that you have read the Pao Cheng book. Word magic. You know, I mean, there's a lot that goes into that too.
Reside means foreigner.
legally.
So if you see the term U.S. citizen, it means released slave. Whenever you see the term U.S. citizen, just think of a black man of African descent with torn clothing. He still has the shackles on his wrists and his ankles, but they're broken. The chains are broken, but the shackles are still there. So if you picture that when you think of a U.S. citizen, bang, you've got it. When you think of the United States, to keep it really, really simple, just think of the District of Columbia. That's not really completely and entirely exactly what it is. It does include, we don't know if it's only part of the District of Columbia or if it's the entire landmass of the District of Columbia. Plus, yes, it has U.S. territories and insular possessions. And yes, technically, federal tribal land would be considered to be exercised. Yes, there's more to this. But simple, you think of this little diamond that's north of Virginia or whatever, called the District of Columbia, and you've got it. You think of the word reside, you think foreigner.
In legal terms, though. I mean,
in legal terms.
Right. I mean, that's
just
where
right there, what I just described to you right there changes everything.
100%. And that's where a lot of that trickery begins, because of using, and that's the other thing. You're using, in a sense, two separate languages in the same document, if you think about it in those terms, because
that's correct.
If something has one definition in one sense and another definition in another sense, again, that is combining, and that's gibberish. It's
so everything in law is sort of like they're speaking in French and then they jump to Japanese and then they jump back to French, and it's just this constant. But there really is only two languages. There really is only English and legalese. But there you are looking at two languages that are randomly intermeshed. It's sort of like when you meet a family that's from another country and they have kids.
And they speak like
English and Armenian,
and Spanish,
English and Spanish, English, and they go back and forth, and they say one thing all of a sudden in the other language. And as a fucking dumb white guy born in Indiana, born and raised and bred on fucking Miller High Life, and a 1971 green fucked up rusted F-150. That's what I know. You know what I mean? Like, I don't understand all this fucking foreigner talk. That's how I grew up. You know what I mean? So the thing is that to me, it's very confusing. If I hear someone and they're talking in English and all of a sudden they're talking in fucking French, the fuck is this?
Right. But if you hear them talking in the same language, but those words mean, it's like they're flipping through different languages using the same words that sound like the same language. That is just fraud. And that should be considered fraud, because it's not being concise with the language that's even being written.
Yeah. So what the first sentence of the 14th Amendment says, and there's probably as many opinions about this first sentence as there are fucking people. In fact, there's probably more opinions than there are people, actually.
Right, because it doesn't say people too. It also says persons, and persons can include corporations.
So in a state wherein they reside, so if you're a U.S. citizen, you aren't allowed to be in California. And that's why when you register to vote, let's try to register for vote right now. Register to vote, state of California.
You don't even have to do that to vote, though, in California, do you?
Register to vote?
Yeah, I thought anybody can go vote in California.
I mean,
no ID, no nothing.
Maybe. No, I mean, who knows, right? So look at these. Look at this. A U.S. citizen and resident of California. Now that we've covered all this, this should make perfect sense to you. A released slave of African descent, or the descendant of a released slave of African descent after the Civil War that was released from slavery, which the legal term for that is called manumission. Manumission was the releasing from slavery. So an African descended person or a descendant of an African descended person who had experienced manumission through the 13th Amendment and then was given a special class of citizenship through the 14th Amendment, who's supposed to only be in the District of Columbia or a U.S. territory or insular possession or a federally registered tribal zone, who is a foreigner for some kind of recreational or business purposes inside of a foreign state called California.
That's a lot of words for just what's written there, sir.
That's correct.
But no, you're exactly right. And then it gives a list of the ors.
And then we have this one.
Which all of which you have to be U.S. citizen.
There is no non-U.S. citizen. There is no state citizen.
Yeah, there's no option for anything other than U.S. citizen.
Now, where does this come from? It comes from the first line that we saw from the slaughterhouse cases. The word
interesting.
voter.
I like how you pulled that back together, sir.
The Negro, having by the 14th Amendment been declared to be a citizen of the United States, is made a voter in every state of the Union. A voter for what? A voter for the United States, not for the state. What they're saying here is that the Negro, having by the 14th Amendment been declared to be a citizen of the United States, can vote for what's going on in the District of Columbia, even though he's in this foreign land called the State of the Union, which we see here.
Right, because it was the Dred Scott case that was trying to say that that they weren't recognizing the 13th Amendment.
Well, the Dred Scott said that if you're African, you're property.
You're still a slave.
You're property. You can go even farther. You're property.
Okay, chattel.
You're like this spry fucking gumbox. Okay. So that's, you should read the Dred Scott. Dred Scott's really good. I haven't read the whole thing myself.
Yeah, I haven't read the entire thing, but I remember it being something to do with trying to say that that there was the 13th Amendment. I'm not sure if it was before the 14th Amendment or if it was after the 14th Amendment. I thought it was after the 13th, and I'm not sure if 13th and 14th took place at the same time period. Some of that stuff I'm not exactly completely knowledgeable on. I probably should be a little bit better knowledgeable on that.
I mean, really, if you just read Slaughterhouse, I mean, that's pretty much got most of what you need. The first observation we have to make on this clause, meaning the first clause, they literally say it right here. Here's the clause. And they're trying to help people figure it out because the whole goddamn, they already said earlier, everybody's talking about it. The public journals are talking about it. The judges are talking about it. Everybody's fucking going crazy over this first sentence. So he's talking about all persons born or naturalized in the United States subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. So he's talking about that. The first observation we have to make on this clause, and again, who's talking?
Yeah, but doesn't that say that everybody is made as a U.S. citizen?
Well, look, this is the guy talking. Just wanted to show you this, okay?
Samuel Freeman Miller.
The first observation we have to make on this clause is that it puts at rest both the questions which we stated to have been the subject of differences of opinion. It declares that persons may be citizens of the United States without regard to their citizenship of a particular state, and it overturns the Dred Scott decision by making all persons born within the United States and subject to its jurisdiction citizens of the United States. That its main purpose was to describe the citizenship of the Negro can admit of no doubt. The phrase subject to its jurisdiction was intended to exclude from its operation children of ministers, consuls, and citizens or subjects of foreign states born within the United States. If you're from California and you have a child in the District of Columbia, if you're from California and you have a child in Guam, if you're from California and you have a child in American Samoa, if you're from California and you have a child in the U.S. Virgin Islands, foreign states born within the United States.
Yeah, but see, now, the thing is, we're not taught that the states that we live in are considered foreign states to the United States.
That's correct.
And I mean, what it says there is very, very simple and very plain. But again, it's not something that we're taught. We're taught the opposite. But that goes back to the education system too, which is all federally regulated.
No, the education system is state regulated with federal funding, and they want to suck the dick of the federal government to get that federal funding, just like what you saw.
So they do what's required to get the funding.
Just like what you saw with Trump. Did you see that thing with Trump and he was busting the governor of Maine's balls because the governor of Maine is still allowing men to play in women's sports?
No,
if you look, it's all over the place. I went on.
There's so much other shit going on. I missed that.
So he just had this thing where he was doing a speech. Pretty funny, actually. I recommend you see it. I actually support a lot of what Trump's doing. I say things that may seem kind of mean or anti-Trump sometimes, but actually, I'm quite impressed with what he's doing. I'm actually not anti-Trump at all. I am a little worried that he may slide down this whole, let's AI and let's go crypto and let's go ahead and just do what the globalists want. I'm a little bit scared that he might go in that direction. I don't see anything currently about him doing that. So I am okay at this point in time with Trump. I have no issues. He did a thing with the governor of Maine where he busted her real good and said, "Hey, I heard you're still fucking live." Like, he's literally in front of a whole room of people. He's like, "Hey, I heard you're still fucking letting men play in women's sports." And she's like, "Yeah, well, blah, blah, blah." He's like, "You can't be doing that shit. You got to stop that shit." He's like, "We won't put up with it, blah, blah, blah." And she's like, "I'll follow state and federal laws." He's like, "This is federal laws. And if you think you're going to get any fucking funding from me, you're not." So the federal government and the state government are separated, but the federal government uses this whole federal budget, federal funding thing to control the states.
If you want the money, you have to do what we're telling you to do, which is which is set a certain curriculum in the education system.
Exactly.
And it partially dumbs down people as well, because none of us are taught about the fact that there's a second language within the English language that has completely different meanings.
Yes.
That would be really important, I think, to learn.
Even the other day, I came up with another one. I come up with these all the time, and it was mind-blowing. The definition of doing business. You've heard of doing business as?
A DBA.
Yeah, if you look up the definition of doing business, it only applies to foreign companies. So doing business, the reason why they use the term doing business is because doing business would mean that you're a resident. So a Chinese company that creates a corporation in America to operate in America, but it's actually a citizen of China, would be doing business as, which would be a resident, not domicile.
You think a DBA makes you a resident?
I know for a fact. I just figured this out like yesterday. Yep.
Okay, because this is something
DBA is resident. Resident is foreign. Foreign is not American. It's a foreign company or citizenship or zone or person operating in America as a foreigner.
So the best way to explain this is what KL talks about, and tell me what you think about this. And I mean, you might have gotten this from the series of stuff that he is talking about in his videos. Is the idea that we're given a game piece to play this game of Monopoly, this game of life, whatever you want to call it. The game piece is provided by the government with your birth certificate and your social security number. So the idea that KL teaches is part of it is creating your own game piece using the DBA.
Yeah, you could do that. I've done that. I got all sorts of trusts and all sorts of craziness. And
so you don't
more tomorrow.
So you're not saying anything negative about creating your own game piece in a sense using the DBA aspect.
No,
in combination with.
The thing is that if you want, I deal a lot with infinite money. Infinite money, you're sort of tied into that social security number, which is why I've tried so hard to learn about the sole proprietorship. But if you're not trying to get infinite money and you just don't want to pay taxes, oh yeah, that's the easiest goddamn thing in the world. Create a trust that isn't under by law, birth, or naturalization. Thus, it is a foreign trust. Thus, a foreign trust doesn't even need to fucking file an income tax return.
Yeah, it doesn't have to even report that it exists.
None of my trusts pay any tax because they aren't. Now check this out. 26. Where is the definition of the word taxpayer? 26 USC 7701 subsection A14 is the definition of the word taxpayer. Taxpayer means any person subject to any internal revenue tax. I have several trusts. None of them are a person subject to any internal revenue tax. I am also not a person subject to any internal revenue tax. The sole proprietorship, I would say, is a taxpayer, technically. That's why every single time they send you a letter of your name in all caps says, "Dear taxpayer." I think the sole proprietorship is always a taxpayer forever. The simple solution is just don't fucking create a bank account in your name in all capital letters. If you have a bank account of your name in all capital letters, close it, create a trust of your name in all capital letters, put all your money in there, and then now the sole proprietorship, which is a taxpayer, doesn't ever have any income. It's very simple. My taxpayer never, ever, ever has any income, ever.
Well, you're just talking about income tax. I mean, and there's obviously the IRS has more taxes.
My taxpayer doesn't exchange, bring in. The only thing my taxpayer does is it creates negotiable instruments. So you got to think, if you have an unconditional promise to pay, you're the endorser, right? But the taxpayer, which is the U.S. citizen, which is your name in all capital letters, sole proprietorship, that person is the person that's actually taking on the debt, right? So then it becomes a question of, well, who's actually creating the promissory note? Is it the endorser or is it the sole proprietorship? To me, it's the endorser, because the person with the credit is the person who can promise to pay. All you got to do is you're like, who's got the credit? Is it the bank? Is the bank giving me credit? What are you saying? Is it the government? I have an SBA loan. Is it the government giving me money? It's really, really simple. Whoever has the ability to promise to pay is the person who has the credit. Who has the credit? You look around. Okay, let's make it easier. Who is the individual who is promising to pay? Oh, that's easy. I am. Bang. That's it. You just answered the question. It's that simple.
Yeah, I mean, that's an area that I haven't really looked into because I'm not like the infinite money person, but it is something that I've had people talk about and I've listened to, and I find it to be intriguing. I understand about money, currency, and I understand the fact that we have nothing backing our money. I understand where everything is based on fucking debt, that when you're given a loan, that there's no actual money involved. I think there was a case in the late 60s where somebody had sued for that very fact on a house, saying that there was no consideration because you're making me pay back a loan of something you never actually gave me.
Yeah, and they never let that go to the appeals, because if it would have went to appeals, it would have become precedent. So that case is actually not precedent. I know about that case.
Well, I wonder too if some of these things are discussed behind the scenes and there's a settlement so that there is no precedent.
Well, of course, we see that all the time.
Because otherwise, yeah, you're opening up a can of worms that they definitely don't want to open up. Because if you don't
need to take any of their fucking bullshit. I mean, you can say no. They can offer you fucking settlement agreement every goddamn day at lunchtime. Nope. Every day for 4 years. Nope.
You talked about taxes and you talked about Trump. And this wasn't even something I was intending to bring up, but what do you think about the idea that Trump is talking about the idea of getting rid of the IRS and creating a external?
He's trying to replace it with well, we'll see. He's trying to replace it with the tariffs. I don't know.
You think though? You think it'll work?
The IRS is tied in with the Federal Reserve pretty tight. So he would have to, I mean, there's a sovereign wealth fund. There's some people that think that's going to be the backing for a new gold-backed currency. I would like to see that.
They're talking about selling the fucking gold that we have and buying Bitcoin. I'm a crypto person, and I wouldn't sell the nation's gold to buy Bitcoin. Well, but that's what they're actually talking about, selling something that's constitutional. And the other thing too, it's really weird, is any gold that is in possession of the United States, like whether it's actually at Fort Knox or not, it's all still being priced under the 1970 price, which I believe is like $35 an ounce.
It honestly, all the gold in the United States probably falls under like UCC Article 9. It's probably all under some kind of security interest document, and it's probably really all owned by the Fed, honestly.
And anyway, collateralized, you mean?
It's all collateralized. Yeah, I'll bet it's all collateral. Well, I mean, whatever. We're going to find out, all this stuff. Who knows, right? But if you look at the Investopedia article on the gold standard, which is a very interesting article, by the way. I just read this, I think, yesterday. I just found this. I thought it was really fascinating. So they say here in Investopedia, from 1871 to 1914, the gold standard was at its pinnacle. During this time, near ideal political conditions existed among most countries, including Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and India, that instituted the gold standard. However, this all changed with the outbreak of the Great War in 1914. It's interesting. It's sort of like, okay, how much of what's going on in this world, in terms of how fucked up the world is literally tied to the fact that we're not on a gold standard? Interesting question.
Well, it makes it unfair for other countries. So it gives advantages to other countries. So that's where they've even talked, like Trump and other people have talked about trying to make all foreign currencies equal to each other so that there wouldn't be an exchange rate.
Well, that would be also very ideal. If every country was on the gold standard,
There would be no reason to fight.
Yeah, you would accomplish that instantly if you put everything on a gold standard, right? So getting back to the slaughterhouse cases, he says here, the next observation is more important in view of the arguments of counsel in the present case. It is that the distinction between citizenship of the United States and citizenship of a state is clearly recognized and established. Not only may a man be a citizen of the United States without being a citizen of a state, this is what everyone is. So let's go back to...
Not only can a man be a citizen, cannot be a citizen of the United States.
Yep. Let's go back to...
But you can be
voter.
a state, you can still be a state citizen and not a citizen of the United States. Is that what you just said?
Well, we're gonna cover it again, because check this out. This is the craziest thing. We're on the California voter website.
We're back to registering to vote, everybody.
Does this right here make you a citizen of California?
Does what? Registering to vote?
This box, this bubble.
Checking that you're a U.S. citizen and a resident of California. Does it make you what?
A state citizen of California.
No.
Correct. That
because
is
there's,
exactly
I mean, for
correct.
one, there is no mention of state citizenship at all.
You are a foreigner in California. Resident means foreigner. So if we go back to what Big
you would be
Dog,
lying on there as a state citizen because the states, yeah. But now are all U.S.
why do you
citizens,
think I don't have a driver's license? I
all
got rid
US
of that thing so fucking fast. I was like, oh fuck, I gotta get rid of this. Because bang, as soon as you start to understand this information, you're a fucking felon. 18 U.S.C. 911. Whoever falsely and willfully represents himself to be a citizen of the United States shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 3 years. If you have a driver's license and you're listening to this show and you weren't aware of any of this information before this point, congratulations. This word, willfully, saved you from being a felon. As of right now in this show, if you've been listening to this show, you are no longer saved from 18 U.S.C. 911. If you have a driver's license or a business license or you're paying federal income taxes, you are a felon.
So ignorance or fraud would make you.
It wouldn't be willfully.
Right. Okay.
If you didn't know, then you can't get hit with 18 U.S.C.
Right. So if you're taught that the U.S. citizens this and you've never heard this conversation prior to, it's okay. Like the ignorance of the law doesn't apply here because
no one's ever going to prosecute you for any of this in a billion fucking years because they don't want anybody knowing about any of this.
Right.
I'm just
saying.
It's
crazy that it even exists though.
On paper, you're a felon. No one's ever going to come for you. And you could go around being like, oh yeah, I lied about being a U.S. citizen for years. No one's coming for you, brother.
Well, it's technically,
technically, you're a felon.
Sodomy is illegal in some states.
Yeah, so it's like that kind of a thing, right? Yeah. So I got rid of everything, man. I got rid of everything so fucking fast. Holy shit!
And you live in California, like, and you're driving around with diplomat tags, no driver's license.
I don't. If I get a driver's license, I'm a felon.
How often do you have to have interactions with law enforcement?
I never have interactions. If I did, I would just show my passport, but I haven't had any issues.
Yeah, I was just curious because I mean,
I would tell.
I know people that have had successes and some people that have had not successes.
I have too. I would tell an officer straight up, sir, I don't qualify for a driver's license. If I tried to get one, I'd be going straight to prison. And that's the truth. That is 100. I will literally under oath walk into a courtroom and I will testify to that fact. I actually just put it in a fucking affidavit in one of my in my SBA case. I put a bunch of this information in the affidavit. If they prove this information to be wrong, I'm going to prison.
It's interesting as code 911 though.
This is it right here.
911.
I'm not a felon anymore. I was a felon for a short time. But by the time I figured out that I was a felon, I worked really, really, really hard to figure out how to not be a felon. And then I went down to the DMV. I changed the driver's license. I did a whole bunch of adjustments to it. I did a different signature. I changed the address. I said no to U.S. citizen. They issued me a new driver's license. So I technically had a driver's license for a year and a half. I don't feel like I was a felon during that time, but there was a small window in between when I learned about this stuff and when I went in to make those corrections. I was a felon during that time.
But those corrections don't allow you to still have a driver's license legally or lawfully without still breaking this code?
If I get a driver's license, I can go to prison for up to 3 years.
Even doing it under the methods of checking not a U.S. citizen and signing a certain way and all that?
No, but you're sort of in this
gray area.
Well,
it's just better not to have it.
It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't make sense because a citizen of a state doesn't need a driver's license. Why the fuck would you need a driver's license?
Are you going back to the right to travel?
Well, by the time you start getting into being a state citizen, you have to go and look at the original state constitution. For example, mine would be the 1849 state constitution of California, which, so shockingly enough, I looked.
Do they legally recognize that though?
There is no it wouldn't be, you wouldn't bring the state constitution into their courts.
Okay.
You would just put in a motion to dismiss because there's no jurisdiction because you're in 1849 constitution zone. You're an actual state citizen. You're actually domiciled in the state. You're not a resident. At that point, they just wouldn't have any jurisdiction. It's just a motion to dismiss. There's nothing to talk about.
All right.
It's just a motion to dismiss for there's maybe no jurisdiction at all. Nothing. It'd be like,
I'm glad
it'd be like someone trying to sue someone in fucking, some Norway citizen. They just had something on this. This guy is a stateless, and he said under penalty of perjury that he was a citizen of like Indonesia, and they dismissed the case. It was actually a rape case, and they dismissed the case because he's stateless or something like that. There was just a press release on this recently.
I don't think that you can be stateless though. That's the thing. I've looked into that. Like I've also like the tribal stuff since it got brought up. I was thinking about early looking into this whole law stuff. Like what about people who are living on reservations that aren't accepting federal funding? They have a certain status that gives them sovereignty that doesn't put them under the jurisdiction of the federal government. Also, and this is something I thought about with the tribal stuff here in North Carolina. There is a reservation, the Cherokee Reservation. It's like an hour south or so from Asheboro. They have a casino there, like other Native American reservations. But something that they did recently was they opened up a dispensary selling cannabis. Cannabis is not legal in North Carolina, and it's very strict for medical. There is no recreational, but you can go on to the Native American, and it got contested, and somehow they were successfully able to open up.
It must not be federally registered. If it was federally registered, then they would get raided.
That's what I was wondering. I'm thinking Cherokee gets federal funding because of the fact that
Cherokee can get federal funding for certain zones and then not get federal funding for other zones, I would assume too.
Because other territories. That would make sense to kind of parcel out territory in certain areas.
That's what I would assume the legal structure is. Certain areas are, certain areas aren't. The areas that aren't would be because
they have their own. Yeah, they can do whatever they want there on the reservation as some.
That's correct.
Which is insane to think about in some areas compared to how we're treated in that aspect.
Even in the Department of the Interior website, which is really funny, they actually just changed this. I was on a show like yesterday, and they actually removed this from their website. Oh boy, I laughed so fucking hard. So because I'm the only one talking about this, so they must have fucking removed it because of me, which just makes me laugh so motherfucking hard. It's unbelievable.
They're a pickle fan.
You go to About and you go to Interior, right? And this is their new look, their new website. Right. And they must have literally, I mean, there's a date on this. They must have just changed this because if you go to the Wayback Machine, Wayback, and then we're going to type in that same URL. We're going to go back just a couple weeks, literally. We're going to go back to like January 27th. And you're going to see that it's totally different. And I swear to God, I'm the only guy talking about this. So it's like there's only one dude. They'd be
I
making
figured it
this.
would have been updated around like January 22nd, 23rd, like that time period, not like 7 days
No,
after
I
the
think it was like a
inauguration.
week ago they removed this. But look at this. What we do, the Department of the Interior plays a central role in how the United States stewards its public lands, increases environmental protections, pursues environmental justice, and honors our nation-to-nation relationship with tribes.
But not all tribes are obviously in that position. There's different, because there's some
Well, what
tribes that
they're
have
just
accepted the
saying,
funding and some that
they're
haven't.
just saying that tribes are separate nations from the nation called United States.
Interesting. So it's also a foreign territory, just as
It's a foreign
North
state.
Carolina and state. So that's even crazier to think about a foreign territory within a foreign territory.
That's correct. So you got to think like my apartment is technically an embassy, but the definition of an embassy is it has to be in the capital of some sort of a country. So I made it sort of like this is my own little country, and then this is the embassy of that country, and then that country is inside of another country, which is called 1849 California. People think that the governor, Gavin Newsom, is the governor of 1849 California. He's actually not. There actually is no governor of 1849 California. There's no courts in 1849 California. I mean, even the county recorder sort of kind of blurs the line between the two, but really everything's on the 1879. Yeah, everything. So I'm in like this vacuum, basically. So when I say that it's my country and I say this is my embassy, there's no judicial structure to tell me that it's not true.
Because there is no that land mass that we see on a map called California doesn't constitute the state of California.
So when I go into court is dialectic materialism. So if you say a fact and there's no other party to say that that fact isn't true, in law, in today's world, it's kind of fucked up. It's actually Marxist. That was a huge realization I had about it.
It becomes true if there's no one opposing you?
It becomes true, yes.
Wow. So even a lie, a fraud could become
even a lie.
True.
If someone says a lie in a court case and you don't rebut that lie becomes truth in that case. It's called dialectic materialism. You can do some research on that. It's a Marxism. This is how our courts work. Is a huge breakthrough I just had, totally shifting everything, and just like it was probably one of the biggest breakthroughs I've ever had.
Dialectic what again?
Materialism.
Okay.
That's how the courts operate in America, right? So if I say this is my country and I say this is my embassy, there's literally no one there to say that that's not true. So in a court of law, it is true. Because
the prosecutor
state of California, state of California, 1879 wouldn't have jurisdiction to say anything about that. It would have to be 1849. There is no 1849 prosecutor. They don't exist.
And because they don't exist doesn't make the other one automatically you're under the jurisdiction of.
If it's not 1849, it's got nothing to do with anything I'm saying. I got nothing to do with 1879. Like I say on my website, I've never even been to 1879. I've never even visited 1879 as a tourist.
Well, you technically have never been to 1849 either.
Well, no, I'm in 1849 right now.
Well, I cannot time travel. I need these secrets.
No, I'm talking about 1849 version of California.
I know. I'm just fucking with you.
Oh, okay, good.
I was just like, are you a time traveler, BJ?
I'm a time traveler, but here.
I just skipped over the 1870s.
Here's another thing that they recently archived.
And they say
it's archived from 2021, but this was live like 3 weeks ago. So I don't know what the fuck they're doing.
Does this have something to do with what you were talking about?
I don't know. It seems like all of a sudden now all these government agencies are watching me, and anything I talk about, they want to remove, which I don't know why they would do that. You can go on the Wayback Machine, takes 5 seconds to pull it up. It just makes everything looks worse. It just actually puts them in even a worse position by doing that. It actually looks even worse for them.
I just don't think you can be stateless, man. It's like you
well, hold on. Look at this. This is a very, 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 very good article, by the way.
Yeah, I definitely want to look into this because
the aftermath of World War II and the reconfiguration of nation states created a surge of stateless populations, which led the drafters of the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which is the UN,
right,
That was actually written and
That's where the
published
right of
by Teddy
self-determination.
Roosevelt's wife.
Okay.
I think it was Teddy Roosevelt's wife.
Well, that's also where the right of self-determination came into play.
A lot of good shit in there.
But that thing comes from Law of Nations as well.
Yeah, I think it was Teddy Roosevelt's wife who wrote this. So, some president's wife wrote this. It's actually a pretty cool story. It's actually written by some president's wife. Okay. To include Article 15, which is the one that I talk about a lot, which states that everyone has the right to a nationality and should not be deprived arbitrarily of his or her nationality, and they can change it whenever they want. I've talked about this.
That's the right of self-determination.
Well,
as far as the international term, that would be the right of self-determination. It's basically, if you're not happy with the jurisdiction that you're in, you're allowed to switch. But until you switch, you're in a jurisdiction that you're unhappy with.
Well, yeah, but most people think that to switch jurisdictions, you have to move your body. That's the false information.
Okay.
The location of your body has absolutely nothing to do.
So nothing to do with expatriation. Nothing to do with expatriation or anything like that.
The location of your body has nothing to do with anything. Has nothing to do with citizenship. Has nothing to do with nationality. Has nothing to do with being a subject of anything. It has nothing to do with anything.
Okay.
The single word that has everything to do with all of the above terms is the word allegiance. And I always say on all these shows, do you have to physically have your body located inside of a zone that a bunch of fucking people happen to call France in order to pledge allegiance to France?
No, I mean, you could become a citizen of France and live somewhere else.
The answer is no. And the other thing is that citizenship and nationality are two totally different things. They have nothing to do with one another, really. If you go on my website, the Amnesty Coalition, I talk about this. I don't offer citizenship. I can't offer citizenship. And people, I don't, right?
What do you offer? Diplomacy?
Look, are there citizens of the Amnesty Coalition? No, because that would require some sort of judicial structure in order to offer citizenship. Nationality only requires allegiance to some kind of ideal or idea, which is easily established through our covenant. But citizenship is defined by someone subjecting themselves to a political body. If there is no judicial system, then what the hell would someone be subjecting themselves to? There's nothing to subject yourself to here, which is exactly noted in the covenant. There are no teeth associated with this nation. There won't be any sort of internal judicial system until our ranks number in the millions. Then at that point, we would be able to offer citizenship. Anyone saying they are citizens of the nation of the Amnesty Coalition don't understand the basic difference between nationality and citizenship.
So you're offering nationality.
We're offering nationality or being a national of. We aren't offering citizenship. I can't offer citizenship. I can't. Even if I wanted to. Oh, I'd love to offer citizenship. Well, too fucking bad.
It's like, I'm so impressed by like the fact that, I mean, I know that you have set your websites up to be able to pull this information up, but you obviously know a lot of this shit very well. Like you can articulate it without actually really having to look at these resources. And I commend you for that. This is a lot of fucking information. As you might have heard in one of the interviews with Alphonse Fagiolo, I'm like, it sounds like what we need to do is go to school to become a lawyer and just not take the bar exam.
Yeah. Well, law school
because it's just so crazy. I mean, it's so crazy. And you can, and I thought about it too. Like where I live, there's Wake Forest University, and there's a law school there, and I could sit in as an auditor and listen and participate and sort of participate, but just not get a grade or credit. But anybody can sit on law courses as an auditor in case people are interested.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's kind of cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah, you just got to say you want to audit the class just for personal reasons.
What does that mean, audit the class?
I don't know the term, the actual definitions for these terms. It's just what I've been told.
Okay. So here's Article 15 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. I want to see this. Who wrote the Universal Declaration of Human Rights? I think it was Teddy Roosevelt's wife. Am I right or am I wrong?
Yeah.
Eleanor Roosevelt.
Teddy Roosevelt at one point. I'm not sure if it was Teddy. There was a U.S. president that got really unhealthy. And his wife was pretty much running things. I mean, it might have been Roosevelt and that might have been the reason that she wrote it, because
too many cigars.
She was involved. She was actually running the country when his health was deteriorating.
Yeah, who knows? anyways, she helped draft the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Article 15 is the one that we use a lot for a lot of this shit because it's directly one, everyone has the right to a nationality. Everyone has the right to pledge allegiance to a group, basically, is how you can read that in English and not legalese. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his nationality, nor denied the right to change his nationality. Let's translate this. No one shall be arbitrarily deprived of his ability to contract as he see fits by pledging allegiance to any particular group he may have already pledged allegiance to, nor denied the right to change the fact that he's pledged allegiance to a particular group or contract the way he wants to contract, or even to pledge allegiance to or contract into multiple groups at the same time. For example, people who have multiple passports. You got to keep in mind, nationality is not a binary thing. It's not on or off or one location. You can pledge allegiance to multiple groups.
Dual citizenship.
Dual nationality, dual citizenship.
Okay. I've never heard the dual nationality, but dual.
You could have 4 nationalities and only 2 citizenships. You could have 15 nationalities and 1 citizenship. You could have 15 nationalities and 0 citizenships. And that's what they're talking about in the stateless article.
Okay.
Now we're starting to get into the stateless article. Okay. So statelessness exists in every region of the world, but remains largely hidden problem without government recognition, right? What does it mean to be stateless? A stateless person is someone who, under national laws, does not enjoy citizenship, which they define as the legal bond between a government and an individual. In any country, while some people are de jure, they're starting to use these terms, which I thought was pretty wild, which is probably why they archived this. Some people are de jure or legally stateless persons, meaning they are not recognized as citizens under the laws of any state. Many people are de facto or effectively stateless persons, meaning they are not recognized as citizens by any state, even if they have a claim to citizenship under the laws of one or more states.
Yeah, no, I like the verbiage on this, de jure and de facto, because it comes back into a lot of things that you can almost say like your 1748 de jure.
Now check this out.
1780 was, or
exactly
is de facto.
Exactly, and they're telling you right here. Look at this is probably another reason why they archived this. What are the causes of statelessness? Some of the common causes are, look at the first fucking thing listed.
Beautiful. I know somebody whose parents were into this movement who does not have a social security number or a birth certificate.
Yeah, but the thing is that when you look up the definition of the term live birth, you ever looked that up before?
I can't say that I have.
You don't know who the fuck's on that thing, brother. I mean, you look up the term live birth and you start thinking, well, hold on a second, is the birth certificate involving me at all?
Well, there's 2 separate birth certificates. I think there's one that involves you, and there's one that involves what I think would be your legal fiction.
Well, yeah, I mean,
is that how you look at it? What is your viewpoint?
I think it has nothing to do with me at all.
Neither one.
None of it. Yeah, none of it has anything to do with me.
Because there's a long and a short form, and the long, I believe, is the one with the doctor's signature.
Well, here it is. And you'll see this all over the internet. I just found this kind of random ass CDC government document that has it here, but this is the same definition you're going to find all over the internet. So it's not like something crazy that you're not going to be able to find. Live birth means the complete expulsion or extraction from its mother of a product of human conception, irrespective of the duration of pregnancy, which, after such expulsion or extraction, breathes or shows any other evidence of life, such as beating of the heart, pulsation of the umbilical cord, or definite movement of voluntary muscles, whether or not the umbilical cord has been cut or the placenta is attached. Heartbeats are to be distinguished from transient cardiac contractions. Respirations are to be distinguished from fleeting respiratory efforts or gas. That last sentence is different than what I'm used to seeing. I've never seen that
also
before.
It sounds really, I mean, it's just a lot of really crazy words put together and to form a couple sentences.
This last sentence is really strange. I've never seen that before.
Because when you're born, there's like afterbirth, there's placentas, there's other stuff. And
So you got to
I don't know
think.
if that other stuff has something to do with this dead entity, because that's what a corporation is, a dead entity. And if the legal fiction creates a corporate entity, like a corporation, it's the dead entity. It's the dead part of you. But it makes no sense with definition, because it says ultimately something that's alive, something that has a heartbeat, something that breathes.
Well, look at this. Here we go. This is giving us some good shit right here. Look at this one. Wow. Okay, I didn't even know this. This makes more sense now. The definition of the term live birth was created from the World Health Organization in 1950.
Who?
World Health Organization.
I know who.
Yeah, the WHO. Yeah. Interesting. I didn't know that. Okay,
I didn't know that
that
either.
makes sense. Why
That
it's
makes a
look
lot
at
of
here's
sense.
the definition right here. Here's the same definition. A live birth occurs when the fetus exits the mother, showing any definite sign of life, such as voluntary movement, heartbeat, or pulsation of the umbilical cord, no matter how brief, and regardless of whether the umbilical cord is cut or intact.
Right. So, I mean, a baby is born from a live birth. That's what I'm gathering.
Well, yeah, but the placenta is also a live birth.
That's what I was asking. I brought up the placenta. I brought up
the umbilical cord is also a live
right,
birth.
and that's kind of what KL has insinuated, is that it's that extra leftover shit that was never claimed that's on the birth certificate.
And the mother abandons that by saying, they get rid of it.
That's where the parents
toss it in the medical trash can.
Right, the parents thing, yeah, and you're never claimed.
They say live birth, certificate of live birth. Live birth of what? And why is the mother listed as an informant on the certificate of live birth?
Mm-hmm. And
so live birth includes all these fucking things, many of which is thrown in the fucking nearest trash can. And then mom is called an informant, and it's on bond paper. I don't want to get into a lot of the craziness and all this stuff.
Well, even the etymology of the word parents and things like that. I mean, there's
all this craziness. We can go down all these deep, crazy, dark rabbit holes.
But that's what I'm saying. There's two birth certificates. There's two.
I've taken a lot of time to try to understand this stuff and tie it down as best I can in case I need to go to a court of law with it. And these are things, the fact that mom's called an informant, very easy to prove. The fact that live birth includes all this other shit that's thrown away and abandoned, that's easy to prove. The fact that it's on bond paper, easy to prove. The fact that it's got all these crazy, weird fucking numbers on it, and then when you get copies of it, it's got even more fucking numbers and barcodes on it, that's easy to prove. There are certain things that are easy to prove, and then there's certain things that are harder to prove.
Right. Well, there's two distinct birth certificates, and that's what I'm saying. Does one represent the real individual, and does one represent the leftover dead entity waste that was never collected and taken home?
Yeah, and then you go to Title 8, and you find out what's the definition of the term person includes organizations, so they can just create the sole proprietorship.
Not both birth certificates are called birth certificates of live birth.
Well, but the other birth certificate is an abstract of. I already went down that rabbit hole. That's an abstract of the certificate of live birth. A
shortened version is
So the certificate of live birth is really the birth certificate, and then the other birth certificate, the shorter one, that's an abstract of the certificate of live birth.
But I have both, and they had two different numbers.
It's an abstract. I already went down that rabbit hole.
Okay, so it has no meaning.
No, it's just it's based off of and connected to.
It's a connection.
And is a lower base version of
the main one.
But without the main one, you wouldn't have that second one.
Right. You have to have the main one to get the second one. So the second one is just kind of just there. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you see this cause of statelessness.
Lack of
birth certificate.
Yep.
Very interesting. Very interesting.
Well, I think between the birth certificate and the social security number is how we get tied into this system.
Yeah, without citizenship, stateless people have no legal protection and no right to vote, and they often lack access to education, employment, healthcare, registration of birth, marriage or death, and property rights.
Now, what you just read there is what some people claim happens when you give up your U.S. citizenship and take and reclaim your state citizenship that was always there.
But the thing is that they're referring to people who actually go down to Washington, D.C. or whatever and get rid of the U.S. citizenship that their sole proprietorship has. They don't understand that there's two persons at play. There's you, and then there's the sole proprietorship. The sole proprietorship is a U.S. citizen. That's how you get a passport. So you were never a U.S. citizen, and you aren't a U.S. citizen. And if you say you're a U.S. citizen and you're going to prison, it's like that now, whether you do any of that or not. The birth certificate's totally irrelevant. The birth certificate is involving an organization called a sole proprietorship, as far as I'm concerned. And you're just the owner of a sole proprietorship, which is a business.
Now, since you had looked this up, do you have information from the IRS website that talks about a sole proprietorship being created like this? Like, is there anything spelled out?
Yeah.
I know we're kind of going back and forth, but all this stuff just seems to be one big, huge, entangled web.
Yeah. If you go to sole proprietorship, the IRS website, a sole proprietor is someone who owns an unincorporated business by themselves. Now, the question I always ask people on shows nowadays, as of recently, because I just started figuring all this out, is you got to ask yourself, when you use your name in all capital letters, they assume it's a business. It's a sole proprietorship, an unincorporated business by themselves. Where the fuck did this business come from? You never opened a business of your name in all capital letters.
And that's kind of what I was getting at.
Yeah. My theory is it's got to be attached to the birth certificate, because I don't see where else it would come from. Right.
I'd love to find more about your findings on that.
They say unincorporated. That doesn't make any sense. How in the fuck could that be? Right. But then it started to make more sense when I went and reviewed the definition of person.
Okay.
Because if you go to the word person, which is 8 USC 1101 subsection B3, I believe. Let's see if I can find that. B3. It's down a bit of a ways. B lowercase b, so it's going to be below these. Here we go. B1, B. Let's see here. B3. Is that it? The son of a bitch. Oh, here it is. B3. The term person means an individual or an organization. So the term individual means individual proprietorship, which means sole proprietorship. There has to be a business. Otherwise, none of this stuff makes any sense. The Commerce Clause is when I broke through all that in December. So
yeah, it's like everything we do, we have to be a
there has to be a business.
Right.
Yeah, there has to be a business.
Because living people can't do business with each other for whatever lawful reason.
So, and the word individual, the definition of the word individual, you won't see defined hardly anywhere. The only place I've ever seen it defined is in 5 USC 552A, which I don't bring it up a lot because it's like a totally randomly different place, but it's the only place I've ever seen the word individual defined. And it's pretty shocking when you read it. The term individual means a citizen of the United States or an alien lawfully admitted for permanent residence. My all-time favorite term.
Favorite oxymoron.
My all-time favorite term, permanent residence.
That should be the name of your channel. Your new branding. Your new branding should be permanent residence.
Dude, that would be like one stupid fuck is like saying like brilliant Mensa manager compared to the term fucking permanent resident. Permanent resident is like, how do you feed yourself? Like, do you kill yourself trying to walk through a doorway? Like, that's permanent residence. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. I mean, sovereign citizen makes more sense than permanent residence.
Not really, but yeah, I'll give it to you.
Seriously, permanent residence is the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life. Okay. So let's break this down. What is an individual? It's a released slave after the Civil War, or the direct descendant of released slaves. They got to be of African descent, or any foreigner that's admitted to stay in the District of Columbia. And if you're not a member of the Federal Bar Association, you can't domicile there because they seem to be the only ones actually there. All you can do is kind of just stay for a while as somebody who's there for some sort of business or recreational purposes. That's the definition of an individual. So we go back to Title 8, and I understand it's a different title, but I've tried to go down this rabbit hole of individual very, very aggressively, and they don't define it in most places for a motherfucking reason. Okay.
Yeah, it must be a reason, because I mean they list separate definitions for each section, if I understand it correctly.
Everything's fucking defined. I mean, honest to God, It's very rare that I find a word that I can't find definitions for. And individual is one of the ones that's very difficult to find definitions for it. There's a fucking reason for that. Okay. The word individual means sole proprietorship. Okay. Or an organization. What the hell does that mean? 8 USC 1101 subsection A28 has your definition. You can see it here. 8 USC 1101 subsection A28. Now, look at the terminology here compared to the terminology here. Very interesting. The term organization means, but is not limited to, an organization, corporation, company, partnership, association, trust, foundation, or fund, and includes a group of persons. Here's the kicker: whether or not incorporated. Unincorporated business. Permanently or temporarily associated together with joint action on any subject. So I've never seen.
That feels like entrapment.
I've never seen a definition of person or anything like that that includes unincorporated entities except in Title 8. Title 8 is the only place I've ever seen it.
What does Title 8 do?
And I think aliens and nationality and passports.
Interesting.
And ultimately citizenship. So if you go to Title 26, you know, it's a really stupid argument to bring forth, but you could say that a sole proprietorship isn't technically a person as per 26 USC 7701 subsection A1. I think that'd be a really stupid argument to make, but it's one that would at least create some discussion, because the term person shall be construed to mean and include an individual, a trust, a state, partnership, association, company, or corporation. They're going to say that a sole proprietorship is an individual, maybe, but then you say, okay, what's the definition of individual? And then that you just blew their tires out, because there is in Title 26, I don't believe there is any defining of the word individual anywhere.
If there's not a definition that's being spelled out, though, does that mean that we go to like the regular English definition of it?
No,
I'm just curious, if it's not spelled out, how are you supposed to interpret it? You can't.
It doesn't put a person trying to push that claim in a very good position.
Yeah, it puts you in a very gray area.
It puts the defendant who the term is being used against them in a good position, but it does not put the plaintiff trying to use that term against somebody else in a very good position. You have a serious uphill battle. What will happen is they'll assume the definition, and the defendant will not fight against that definition. That's how they win. But if the defendant knew that the word individual is not defined anywhere in Title 26, woo, boy, I would be, you'd be taking that IRS agent on one hell of a fucking roller coaster ride they'd never been on. In fact, they'd probably just dismiss the case, because it would just require such a tremendous amount of back and forth bullshit, and it would just reduce the chances of them winning so dramatically, because they would have to fight like hell. It's probably just not even worth it. From all the research and all the reports I've gotten about the IRS, they're looking for like easy kills. They're like vultures, basically.
That's how every government agency.
They want something that's already laying down, pale,
or someone who can't afford to
breathing.
defend themselves,
and
have to settle, so they can set a precedent.
Exactly right. Yeah. People think the IRS goes after everybody all the time, and then you ask them, "Oh, really? Who do you know that they've done that to?" "Oh, Wesley Snipes, 25 years ago." You know what I mean? It's okay.
Willie Nelson.
They did it to 25 years, and not a fucking gigantic black fucking celebrity. Is there anybody else that you can name that, oh no, actually, okay, you're
Joseph
fucking retarded.
Bannister. Joseph Bannister.
That's a whole nother.
He made himself kind of a target in that sense, too.
So, and Joseph Bannister doesn't talk about a lot of this shit. I watched the video.
He keeps it strictly to income
tax. He's strictly Title 26, top to bottom.
He's very much like a Boy Scout. Anything that deals with the idea.
And I think he's a badass dude. I wish I saw him doing some more of this stuff. I think this stuff would really help him. He just doesn't seem like the kind of guy he did his thing. He's done his thing. Title 26. That's it.
I tried talking about it privately, and I really wasn't getting much, because I know that he's surrounded himself with people that think in those terms. and it just hasn't like seemed to like cross over. Like, I don't know. I'm sure you've heard of Freedom Law School, that guy Payman.
Yeah.
Yeah, he tries to refute a lot of the state national stuff, and he also talks about IRS and taxation of income and such being.
Well, I try to refute a lot of this stuff too. I'm trying to refute my own shit. That's
Right.
why you don't see anybody fucking posted anything about me anywhere. I mean, because there's nobody that's more fucking hardcore and trying to poke holes in my shit more than me, motherfucker. There will never be anyone who will step up to the plate who's trying to aggressively tear down my shit more than me. I promise you that.
I believe that. I often wonder it too. Like, do you actually sleep?
I sleep great, bro. Hell yeah.
You
I
sleep
8
like long.
hours.
You sleep. Okay, I wasn't sure because it seems
8
like you're
hours,
always
brother.
around.
Well, I got rid of everything. You know, I most of my friends are gone. Most everything I do is gone. All my professional relationships are all gone, either from my choice or their choice. And I left my day job at the October of 23 and stuff. So it's just
That's cool.
I don't have a wife. I don't have nothing. Literally,
Right.
I could just wake.
So you can
I'm like a 16-year-old kid, basically. I mean, I could wake up.
dedicate all your time. Yeah,
I could
like
wake
that.
up and fucking play with Hot Wheels toys, and then go outside and fucking play in the mud, and then come back inside and take a nap, and then watch fucking Teletubbies, and then go to bed if I wanted to. So
Just keep yourself sane in the process, man. That's one thing.
Oh yeah.
A lot of this shit can get to you after a while. I had to take a break from this for a while because of it.
No.
Interviewing people, finding out a lot of these people aren't who they claim to be, just dealing with this backtracking of now having to go through like a longer vetting process before I even invite somebody on my show. Just a bunch of.
No, I understand all that. I mean, in my 1.0 course, I was naming off all sorts of names, and I was super excited, and it was all very new, and I thought everybody had a piece of the pie, and then I learned that's not even remotely true, and then a lot of those people have burned off the face of the earth and all this kind of craziness. So, it's my 2.0 course. I only name like 2 or 3 people, and nowadays I really only talk about a few people. I talk about Jaleel Bay over at Moorish Lighthouse Official. I love his work. Oh my God, he's one of the best. Cameron Wilson and I are actually about ready to do a live event in Austin. We haven't even announced it yet. It's going to be announced like today or tomorrow. Him and I have connected pretty aggressively recently. I had Colonel Wilson from Copper Moonshine Stills on my show, and from what I've heard, he's never been on anybody's show. I don't know if that's true or not. So that was pretty cool. So he's like old school though. He's like
since you've done that interview, and I noticed this because I was like, how the hell did he reach out to him? And because I was like really surprised, honestly. And going to the website, I believe now the information he has his contact information.
Well, he has a website. It got totally revamped and all this stuff.
Yeah. So I guess when they
just called him one day and I said, hey, I'm Brandon Williams and this and that. And he knew who I was. And I said, love your work. And he said, I'm doing some medical stuff here soon. And I tried to set up a show with him. And then the day of, he wasn't feeling so well. And I tried really hard to kind of still try to get him on the show, actually. And then he said no. And I said, okay. And then I think it was like 6 or 8 months went by. He had some medical stuff. I'm not going to get into that on TV. He doesn't seem to give a fuck that I say any of this, but still, out of respect for him, I'm not going to get into the private details.
Yeah, if you look right here on screen,
6 to 8, 9 months later, I call him up randomly 6 or 9 months later, and I said, hey, how you doing? How was your thing? It was okay. I'm pretty much fully recovered now. I said, hey, can we do that show now? I would love to do that show with you. And he said, yes. And then he came on the show and you could barely hear him. And I said, do you have any headphones? Do you have anything? And he was like, nope. And I was like, could you get headphones? And he's just like, nope. His attitude, he's just a really friendly guy, but his attitude was like, motherfucker, I'm here. You either take it as it is or I'm not doing this. Right. But it was like in the friendliest, chillest, coolest, most badass, smiley way. That was kind of like his. And I just said, fuck it. And I just did the show and the audio is horrible. So I went through and I manually typed all of the
what was being said, transcript.
Yeah, the transcript, and I put it in there. And that was the show.
if you look on screen now he's got his phone number and email
Yeah.
address and a follow us at Facebook, where none of this existed prior to from what I remember
Yeah.
him interviewing with you.
He's in my private Facebook group. He even comments sometimes. He'll drop in random. I haven't heard from him in a while. I hope he's okay. But he'll just drop in random as fuck. He's just he'll come in and he'll say all this cool stuff and then he'll just disappear like fucking Batman. So I've had some cool stuff with some cool people, but I'm like you, there's very few people that I talk much about anymore. And I don't really think they're all horrible people. I don't really think that everyone's fucked in the head or horrible or this and that. I just think that there's a lot of really great platforms available now that weren't available even a year or two ago. And I would prefer to have people focus on those better platforms. And when I define better, I mean clearer, more concise, more linear, more put together. And most importantly, they don't have an undertone of hatred, warfare, and disgust. That's probably the number one rule for me.
Well said.
So
we had covered a little bit of this the first time we talked about, various teachers, and I definitely liked your way of looking at things. You're a lot more positive about this than I was.
I've always been pretty positive about this because I see endless riches. I see, I don't know if you ever played the video game Uncharted. I just started playing Uncharted 4.
No, I don't play video games.
I love video games. It's a video game all about finding pirate treasure. And you're going through these caverns and there's these secret mazes and you can get your arm chopped off if you don't fucking do the puzzle right and all this craziness, right? So I look at all of this like a big pirate map, basically. And if you get to certain points in the pirate map, I've discharged hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. I don't pay federal income tax. I'm not a taxpayer. We're looking at it right now. If you're back on my screen, creating trusts, helping other people create trusts, getting rid of the driver's license, getting rid of my license plate, saving money on that. Emotional is just absolutely invaluable. Feeling clearer, feeling better, feeling freer, feeling friendlier. I feel like when you really start to understand this information, you start to feel friendlier, because what the fuck is Mr. Police Officer going to do to me? He can shoot me. That's for damn sure. Right.
Well, anyone can shoot. That's happened with some.
Yeah. Anyone can shoot me. But the thing is that I'm going to be so nice to the motherfucker. And I'm white. Let's be honest. I'm ghosty too. I'm like ghosty pale white. Let's just be honest.
You're
right?
Ultra white.
I mean, Cameron Wilson talks about that too. It's sort of, I'm like pasteurized. So it's like, that obviously does have some effect. I'm not going to sit here and say that's the make or break point. That's fucking ignorant as shit. But we will say it does help my matter. Okay. And then, so I have my hands on the steering wheel. I'm very kind. I'm very soft. I don't say the trigger words. I don't say right to travel. I don't say jurisdiction. I don't say nah, you can't get me, bitch. I don't say any of these things. I don't say angry things. I don't say things in an angry tone of voice. I treat them like children. So, I don't see why that's so fucking complicated. A lot of people have a hard time with that. They just get so fucking worked up and they get so fucking emotional that they explode. And I say over and over and over and over and over, I've been saying it for years, don't talk about the right to travel. Don't talk about jurisdiction. What does every motherfucker do? Every motherfucker do?
They talk about
right to travel and jurisdiction.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they call me and they say, Brandon, the diplomatic plates didn't work.
Being combative and trying to educate a police officer. Like if you're in
it's very simple. I have it here.
That doesn't go very well.
I have it right here. I'm going to fix this. I swear to God, or die trying. I have it right here on the back of my brand new identification cards that are going to be sold soon. You don't need to fucking remember any of this. Obviously, people can't do this. This is the biggest area of failure of everything I teach is don't fucking talk about this bullshit, and people get pulled over and they still do it because I don't know what the fucking issue is. Some kind of weird lockup in their mind. So they're going to be able to read right off the fucking card. As an ambassador at large for a foreign non-governmental organization, NGO, on a political mission, I operate in a diplomatic capacity and do not maintain residency in any of the 50 U.S. states or the District of Columbia. Additionally, I hold a foreign private motor carrier number issued by the U.S. Department of Transportation. Also, I am not engaged in the transportation of any persons or property for any fee, rate, charge, or any other form of consideration. That's all you have to fucking say. And you don't even need to say that last part, really.
What is the private motor carrier thing you said?
That's from the DOT. You can get a free number specifically for like foreign trusts and stuff like that are occasionally transporting people for some sort of fee, rate, charge, or other consideration. You can get what's called a private motor carrier number. And it's basically to where like your primary activity is not to transport persons or cargo or property for any fee, rate, charge, or other consideration, but you may do it occasionally. And it's specifically for, you can type it right in. Are you on my screen?
Well, what do you get for it? Yeah, I'm on your screen now.
Foreign private motor carrier.
Like, are you given a number? Are you given like a document?
Yeah, you're given a number.
You don't have like a private tag or anything like that?
No. Foreign 49 USC, Title 49 is transportation. 49 USC 13102 subsection 7. Private foreign motor private carrier. The term foreign motor private carrier means a person, including a motor private carrier, but excluding a motor carrier of property, that that is domiciled in a contiguous foreign country, meaning like there's boundary. I don't really know why they would use this term. It's actually false. This means like sharing a common border, right? Or 2, that is owned or controlled by persons of a contiguous foreign country, right? So I could say like, we do ours, like the nation of the Amnesty Coalition is the contiguous foreign country, okay? And B, in the case of a person that is not a motor private carrier that provides interstate transportation of property by motor vehicle. Anyways, we don't really care about all this that much. I mean, just this alone, we can handle a police officer pretty easily. We're a foreign motor private carrier, and we have the number to prove that. You can get it for free from the DOT website. I have a whole video. I think it's video number 4, 5, or 6 on my free course where we walk through the entire application process, which takes about 20 to 40 minutes. We go to the website, we log in, we go to page 1, and I fill out the entire application all the way to the end live in the free course.
Is that V2?
Yeah, 2.0.
2.0. Okay. And when are you, you had mentioned to me that you're going to be doing a 3.0. When are you doing
that? No. I reviewed a lot of the videos recently. They're actually pretty good.
Okay. Because that's one thing I was going to pause on 2 and wait till 3, but I'll just go ahead and start watching the V2 videos.
I wouldn't because I wouldn't.
Why?
Just 3.0 is going to be a while. 3.0 is going to be a while. So 2.0 is, everybody should just be watching 2.0. That's
what I was just saying is that since 3.0 is not coming out right away, I'm going to go ahead and start watching 2.0. And I thought you were telling me not to watch 2.0.
Oh, no. Yeah, you should. It's
okay.
Great. It'll be great.
I'm like, why are you telling me not to watch 2.0?
So once you get the DOT number, then you can go and get, you want to get rid of your driver's license, get rid of your certificate of title, which we have all the stuff here on the Amnesty Coalition to help you with that. And then once you've completed all that, which I have all that information here, you can go to platesandgear.com/product-category/Amnesty Coalition. And you can go here and you can select of these 2 plates, which one you want. This one is the closest to the Department of State style. This is the one I like the most. I don't even know why he has the other one. And the color is really, really nice. Like actually, when you get it in the mail, literally, it looks just like this. It's gorgeous. Okay.
So when you see people who have,
and then all you do is you just type in
your number.
That's my DOT number, 4043625.
And then I'll put that on your plate.
Add to cart. You're going to choose an option. This is you can get a motorcycle. So I have one for my motorcycle and I have one for my vehicle. You're going to get the vehicle number. Add to cart. $45, which to me is pretty fucking cheap. I think you should actually charge more. And then I think there's a little bit of a shipping fee.
So when you see people with the private plates that are kind of handmade, not necessarily handmade, but made nice, but they're not technically from like DMV or anything like that.
I don't like them, but
I was going to ask you what would be the difference in between those two type style plates.
The private plates, I mean, you're totally rolling the dice. I mean,
okay. So you think the diplomatic thing is what
50
helps you?
50. I know people who drive around in Lambos with private plates and they never have any issues. And I know people who they can't even hit the road without getting fucking jacked. I mean, Joe Lustica is one of them. Joe Lustica got jacked like 2 or 3 times using those.
It's almost, you're almost asking to get pulled over with those things. That's what I was like wondering. Like
the diplomatic plates it's extremely rare. It does happen, but it's extremely rare that I hear of issues.
Okay.
I'd say less than 3 or 2% of people have issues with diplomatic plates. Now, let's say your whole car is a giant fucking cloud of pot smoke and you're drunk and the whole side of your car is fucking smashed in and you never fixed it and you have diplomatic plates in your car. That's not going to go over so well. And that does happen,
you look
by
like
the
you're
way.
trying to, you look like you're trying to get out of trouble and you're just using whatever mechanism you can. Yeah, no, I get it.
That does happen. So the thing is that what percentage of the 2% fall into that category? And then what percentage of the 2% fall into the, I'm just traveling and all this other fucking dog shit makes me want to fucking literally go and fly wherever they're at and testify against them to put them in prison for using my plates and saying stupid fucking bullshit. Or they're rude to the police officer, which is even worse than all the above combined.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the rudeness, and it's people obviously need to get this out of their head, is that people look at the police as being authority figures, and when you think you have knowledge above them being the authority figure, you're trying to put yourself in the authority position, and that doesn't work out very well when you're talking to a law enforcement officer.
Yeah, you need to understand. You need to read the diplomatic and consular immunity guide, diplomatic and consular immunity guide.
Because they can get in trouble for things. It's not like
right here you can
have
see
diplomatic tags, you're not going to have
state.gov.com/upload straight from the DOS. We have this glorious, very easy to read. Most of it's just pictures. And if we go all the way down, it talks about all the different types and the difference between a consul versus a diplomat, what level of protections do they have, and then they have service staff. So there's two main subcategories, and then there's like 4 subcategories of the 2 main subcategories. And there's a whole chart down here at the bottom that shows us this one here. This is Appendix C, right? So they have it in 4 different classifications, but it's really more like 2, but they have it listed as 4 different classifications, right? So diplomatic would be here. So the easiest way to think of consular versus diplomatic is commercial versus non-commercial. Consular is more commercial. Diplomatic is non-commercial.
Okay.
For example, no one knows this, but who issues the U.S. passports?
Who issues a state? No, it's not a state.
Consular Affairs.
Department of States.
Bureau of Consular Affairs. So you got to think. I had a big realization on this about 4 months ago. You got to think. That means when they issue you a passport, you are a consular. That's why.
Okay.
That's why people use their passports and they get treated. I thought it was the 3, 4, 5-star thing. That's wrong. I took all that out in the 2.0 course. That's all wrong.
It's because when you're traveling to another country, you're a consort.
It's because if you have a passport,
or a consular.
If you present a passport, you are a consular. Passport and consular is the same word.
Right, which kind of puts you in a special category where the nation needs to make sure you're protected.
Yeah, so you have career consular officer, honorary consular officer, and then consular employees. I don't know which one. Maybe this is kind of where you start getting into the 3, 4, 5-star. I don't know. I don't give a shit anymore. I'm tired of hearing about it and talking about it. I don't talk about that shit anymore. I can't figure it out. There's no way to figure it out. There's FOIA requests and all this stuff. They all get denied.
No, I've looked into this.
We've run into the end of that research project. If I'm in a research project and it starts to grind real fucking hard, I just say, fuck it. We'll figure it out later. And I go to some other research project that's actually moving. I never allow myself to get too grindy into a project because it just gets really upsetting. So if you have 17 fucking projects, life becomes a lot more enjoyable, because if one starts to grind, you fuck the thing and throw it in the closet for a while, maybe a year, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years, maybe 4 years. And then 2 years down the line, all of a sudden, a research project number 64 pops up with something, and I'm like, holy shit. And now what am I doing? I'm digging through the closet to pull that thing out because it fits. Okay. That's how I operate. Right. So I abandoned the 3, 4, 5-star bullshit. I don't care. I don't know. I don't really think anymore that it really has much to do with anything. Right. So if the ones that were given by the U.S. Department of State are this career consular officer, it says here, this first box, can they be arrested or detained? No, except in the case of a felony and pursuant to a warrant.
Right. Well, I mean, like, yeah.
Now check this out.
Murdering somebody would be
now check this out. Now hold on a second. Check this out. What thing or country do you think of when you read this? The goddamn U.S. Constitution, a fucking state citizen. Everyone was in this category before 1871. If there was no felony and there was no warrant, they couldn't do anything to you until after 1871, until the creation of the U.S. citizen and all this goofiness.
Unhighlight that so I can read it again.
Everyone wonders where their rights are. Your rights are right here.
I mean, I could see the idea of the felony, what is it, pursuant to a warrant?
Well, I'm just saying, the reason why I like a lot of this diplomatic stuff is because this is where all your rights went, and this is how you can still access them.
Okay, because you're
now look at diplomat. Look at how crazy this one gets. No, you have to go all the way down to service staff to get a yes. And then look at this.
I know, but if someone who's a diplomat in the United States and kills somebody, though.
Well, yes, of course.
Are we just dealing with traveling?
I will explain this to you. Look at the second box. Enter residence subject to ordinary procedures. No. Right. Okay. Now look at here. Arrested or detained. No. There's a little note. Subnote 1 has the answer to the question you just asked me. We're going to go down to subnote 1. We're going to get that answer for you. What does it say here? Reasonable constraints, however, may be applied in emergency circumstances involving self-defense, public safety, or the prevention of serious criminal acts.
Which is like causing harm.
Exactly.
Okay. So it's like, yeah, that's in a sense, this is why, like, I mean, I know like this, it may not be relevant, but when people talk about some of these politicians that may be doing things that are bad and should be arrested, a lot of times it's because of their status. It's the way that they are, because if they're not technically causing harm, they cannot be arrested.
That's correct. And to prosecute them.
And I would use like Hillary Clinton as an example.
Yeah. Prosecuting someone like that would require a lot of good, solid evidence.
Right. You have to be able to prove beyond a fucking shadow of a doubt.
And she goes around deleting servers or whatever she got in trouble for. If you delete the server and the server's where the evidence was, well, you're fucked.
Yeah, there's doubt. So you have to have 100% proof. Yes. I was just curious about that because, I mean, obviously somebody who's a diplomat is not just, can just go into another nation and do what the fuck they want.
No.
But now when it comes to like
there's a whole section about that. I think it's 18 USC 112, and there's a couple other areas where they talk about how you can lose your status and how can you lose your status, and there's a whole thing to it.
Yeah, like if you keep abusing it, but like if you're speeding down the highway and it's not like reckless speeding, you're not getting a ticket. Yeah, Maggie, if you're in the reckless area, which does put you in the felony area, then
there would have to be a victim. Yeah,
that makes sense. That sounds very common law.
Yeah, well, that's basically what to me, the diplomatic window is the window into common law, right?
That's kind of what
I wanted to show you something.
Like
I wanted to show you something else. This is also very, very interesting, and I've never really seen anyone talk about this, which I think is really stupid. This is just kind of like a total side note. everywhere when they talk about the tax liability, they say anyone who is involved in a trade or business in the United States. Well, we've already gone over the United States in great detail. So most people already know that they wouldn't be a taxpayer anymore because they're not in the United States, because that's already been beaten to death, right? But we can go even farther and look at the definition of trade. This is probably one of the most nefarious things I've ever found, besides the fact that individual is not defined anywhere. I'd say individual not being defined anywhere is probably like one of the number one most nefarious things I've ever seen. And then this is probably the number two, maybe. If I thought about it more, maybe like number three, but it's up there in the top five for sure. The term trade or business includes the performance of the functions of a public office. And people will say, oh, includes. No, that's not how it works. Includes means only and exclusively the following listed items. It doesn't mean it doesn't open the door for a bunch of other random shit that's like not even fucking mentioned. That's bullshit. It's not even a definition by definition. So you can just remove the term includes. The term trade or business means the performance of the functions of a public office. Public office means a governmental office.
That's what I was going to ask you. What is a public office?
Yeah.
So then a people, not a person, a people, because it's singular and plural, can't be under that definition.
If you had, let's say, a DOJ attorney is a man, but he would operate through the sole proprietorship so it'd be a trade or business, but it'd be under the sole proprietorship.
Okay. Man, this is a really fucking interesting conversation. I mean, I definitely have learned some things that I hadn't really talked about, and got some things that I definitely want to look into a little bit more. It's been fascinating, my friend.
Yeah, and I was going to go through some more of this slaughterhouse, but we have several more quotes, which will take a long time. But everyone should I have 14 quotes from the slaughterhouse that are all super ultra insane and epic. Those are my favorite 14.
But the Williams and Williams website.
But really, I mean, honestly, there's only one case that everyone should read. There's really not any other case anywhere, and I've read hundreds at this point. There's really not any other case that I would say every motherfucker walking the earth has to read except this one. Really, honestly. 83 US 36. And like I showed earlier in the show, in case you missed it, all you do is just go to Google Scholar. You'll see articles and case law. You're just going to click on the case law bubble. You're going to type in the space slaughterhouse space cases. It'll come up right here. There's a hyphen in between slaughter and house. It's 83 US 36. You're going to click there, and then bang, you're there.
I would say I would include a link, but you've explained it so well for people how to do it that I think people need to be able to do things themselves without just clicking on a link. So
yeah, it looks like a lot, but as you've seen, they describe it pretty well, and they really don't go super off the deep end with the legalese on this one. It's actually sure, you might need to look up some definitions of some words, maybe English words as well as legal words. But this looks like a nightmare that's going to take you the rest of your life. It really isn't. It really isn't.
Do you know how many times this case may have been cited in other successful cases?
As far as I can tell, this case, I don't know if I think they avoid it at all costs.
Well, that's what I was saying.
I think even if you bring it up, I'm not even so sure they're even allowed to talk about this one. I don't know.
But it's technically in case law. It should be able to be brought up in.
Oh, this isn't just this case. When you read it, you'll realize it's the basis of our entire civilization. Literally, it's never been overturned. It's never been questioned. It's never been touched. In fact, a lot of the cases that came before this for like 3 or 4 or 5 years, all they did was refer back to this case as this is it, guys. It's already been decided. We're not going into this. So again, it kind of goes back to Rome. Like if all roads lead to Rome, you're looking at it right here. This is Rome.
Okay. Well, it goes back to me. It's like when I brought up the question about pre-1933 case law not existing. You're just saying though, it's more like they just pretend like this case doesn't exist.
They don't pretend that it doesn't exist. Like a lot of the stuff when it comes to a lot of this legal stuff, and I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen. A lot of this legal stuff just comes down to how hard are you willing to push it? I'll scream about the slaughterhouse cases all day and night for years and years, and I don't give a shit.
Right. No, I get what you're saying. I mean, you got to make sure something's if you're dealing with a situation in court, you got to make sure that you're being heard and not being dismissed, because it's not something that's imaginary. It's a real case. It's in real case law.
Yeah, like some people were like they'll be all mousy and they'll go in there and they'll be like, oh yeah, the slaughterhouse cases, and then they'll like wait for a reaction. Like I'd print the whole slaughterhouse cases out and it would be, I wouldn't even staple it, and I would throw it into the air and start screaming. You know what I mean? Like there is no that's not how this is going to work. I don't care what anybody says. Like this is the case that all this stuff comes from. I'm not a 14th Amendment. I'm not a released slave. I'm not of African descent. I mean, I can just go like this and you can figure that out. I mean, take a look, brother.
The albino rhino over there.
Yeah, I'm a fucking literally like a fucking
you glow in the dark, I'm sure.
I'm like glow in the dark, so it's like fucking ridiculous, right? So it's just one of those things where
the bedtime bug.
I don't even need to say it. Are you a U.S. citizen? I don't even need to say anything. If you can see me, I mean, no. The answer is no. So,
awesome.
It's, I mean, I think it just comes down to personal certainty. When you really have a good personal certainty, if you aren't a U.S. citizen, that changes everything. Because now, like when I go into the courtrooms, I'm not going into the courtrooms as me. I'm going into the courtrooms as the agent on behalf of the sole proprietorship. The sole proprietorship is a U.S. Citizen, is a U.S. citizen, right? So the plaintiff is the U.S. citizen, and then I'm the agent on behalf of the U.S. citizen, because the U.S. citizen can't write or talk or defend himself or sue other people, right? But then you start getting into the word person, like all these people going into the courts pro se or sui juris doesn't make sense to me, because you aren't legally a person. You aren't legally an individual. How can you be an individual? An individual under the Commerce Clause would have to be some sort of commercial entity in order to have any standing at all. The definition of individual has to conform with the Commerce Clause. So what is the commercial entity that's there? It took me years to figure that out. I finally figured that out. It's a sole proprietorship. So like people go in there and they say they're so pro se or sui juris. You that's illegal. You can't be there. You don't even fit the definition of the word person. If you aren't a person per their definitions, how can you be there? It doesn't make any sense to me. So the only way that it makes sense that you can enter into a court of law is you enter the sole proprietorship, which is a person, which does fall under the Commerce Clause as the plaintiff or defendant. And then you are the agent on behalf of that person. And now everything is perfect. Everything is correct. Everything's by the books. Everything's by law. There's even case law stating that you don't need an attorney at law to present on behalf of a sole proprietorship. It's a special kind of corporation. There's already case law on that as well. So you can still operate pro se, but you're not even there. You're just the agent on behalf of who's there. And that's what I've been doing, and I haven't had any issues yet. So if I do, I'm gonna raise hell.
How often are you seeing yourself in court?
Physically?
Well, like
Never.
dealing with any of these issues.
It's all paper. I try to get hearings, and the hearings get set, and then they get canceled a week before or a few days before every single time. I've never gotten a hearing.
Never got a hearing, so you never got.
I want to. I would desperately want to. I'm always very excited. I always check the schedule in the chamber's website, a few days before, if they haven't said anything, but they've always gotten canceled.
So, I mean, like over the past year or so, you've never gotten pulled over by a law enforcement officer who's tried to give you a ticket for driving without a license or a proper registration and tag and all that kind of stuff?
Nope.
Okay.
Never had any issues. There was some traffic a couple nights ago in West Hollywood, and I had to merge in right behind a sheriff, or right in front of a sheriff. And I waved and I said, thank you for letting me in. He let me in because it was all merging into one lane. And he was right behind me in a really heavy traffic for probably about 10 full minutes. No issues.
Nice. Okay.
Now my car is not beat up. It's fucking cool. It sounds great. It's a straight piped 2009 Shelby GT500, so it's very fucking loud. It sounds like a fucking demon out of hell. It's
Nice.
very clean. It doesn't have any dings or any weird. It's got teeny tiny little paint chip on the back bumper. Barely, you can't even see it unless you get up close. So, it's a nice car. It's clean. It sounds good. I'm not driving around. I mean, I could be if I wanted to, but I wasn't at that time driving around like a fucking maniac or anything like that. So, there was no reason to pull me over above and beyond the diplomatic plates. And typically no one has an issue with the diplomatic plates. So
Interesting, man. Well, like I said, before we started recording, I definitely don't want to go. I was actually looking at it's actually like 1 day off from being 60 days because we recorded on the 20th of December. I know we had to reschedule. So, but I'd like to make sure, we could talk a little bit more frequently. I enjoy the conversation.
Sure, yeah.
So before we wrap up, it's been a long one. I know we went a little bit over the time that we discussed. We're a little over 3 hours. So you got any final thoughts, man? Anything you want to add before we do kill this?
No, it's good. I think a lot of my audience likes these newer shows because the old shows that I used to do before I took that long break, they were very linear. And I think they're probably noticing that these newer shows aren't linear. They're kind of all over the place, but in a really cool way. And I think it's cool because we're starting to like start in new areas and then kind of like wind up in a bunch of different areas. And we're kind of like getting better and better as a group, I think, of like connecting everything together from like any other point. Like before it was like, if I'm on A and someone tries to pull me to D, I'm like, fuck, I want to go to like B and C first and then go to D. And I think now like we're just getting so good at the information and our understanding and our depth is getting so deep in all this information that we can just like go anywhere from any point. And I think that's really fucking cool. I think that's like way, 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 way above like any bar card has ever been. Seriously. Like,
yeah, no, man, dude,
no bar card has ever been to anything like the level that we're getting to right now, ever.
And honestly, man, I appreciate being able to have these conversations to not only learn from other people, but when you're talking out loud too, you're also kind of thinking out loud. And I think that's also how we are in the process of learning. So I think always being in that process of learning is the best thing that we can do. And I appreciate you for being like that, because otherwise you would have been stuck in V1 and that would have been it. You would have never changed your lanes.
Yeah, a lot of guys do that. They learn a couple things and they just start selling and then they just never move. And how can you, that makes no sense to me. Like, how can you, I don't even understand how people can even have like a fucking marriage. Seriously. Like, I don't even understand how you can even fucking work a job. Like Cameron Wilson lost one of his fucking clients and he called me and he was like, fucking, what do I do in this and that? And I'm like, bro, it's the best fucking thing that has ever happened to you. What the fuck are you doing working a day job? This is ridiculous. I'm like, you're like me, aren't you? The last 8 months I was at my day job, you weren't even there, bro. You were on your phone doing legal research or responding to something. You were physically there, but you were mentally completely over in the legal zone. He was like, yep. I'm like, yeah, motherfucker. The last 8 months I was at my day job. I was physically there, but I was completely checked out. People who are into this shit, it just doesn't make sense. Like, why are you doing anything else? Like, it doesn't make any sense to me. And people could tell me family and people could tell me this. And it still doesn't make sense, bro. Like, I would jump off a fucking cliff to do this shit. Like, I just don't see the point in anything else. And now we're starting to get into a thing where people can make money doing it. You can help people with this shit. It doesn't need to be litigation. Obviously, that's for like psychopaths like me, and I get that, right? But like even simple shit, like sending in a fucking IRS bill is the easiest fucking thing in the world, or helping someone get their passport situated, or just teaching somebody some of the basics, or helping someone open up a bank account for a trust. Simple shit, I just don't get why anyone would do anything else. So
yeah, no, I agree with you, man. I think sometimes too, people are their own worst enemies and kind of keep themselves from moving forward and may just self-sabotage themselves in ways without even realizing it.
Yeah.
But it also, it takes having that complete confidence. One other thing too that I'll add before we wrap up is that I've noticed in the past, there are some people that would consider themselves teachers, that their students would have issues with law enforcement and such, and the teachers would try to guide them through what to do. But the teacher themselves had never been in a situation. And they're almost using their community as like test dummies so they can try to figure out what does and doesn't work without actually having to do it themselves.
I would say I probably, to be honest with you, kind of fit that category, even though it doesn't sound like you're speaking very highly of those people. And the reason why I say that is because, but the thing is, I don't charge though. So
it depends on the situation. I'm talking like situations where people are going to jail. Are you like advising people in situations where they could be going to jail and shit?
That's really, really, really super ultra rare. And when I say ultra rare, I mean like they have to freak out and like get pissed and start screaming at cops, which obviously I don't, that's not my thing. But like I think of it like this, when you start to understand this information well enough and you start to understand people really well and you understand diplomatic information and diplomatic, you start reading all the diplomatic guides and everything, you start to really get that down. You're just not going to have any problems with cops. So people are like, oh, well, you never fucking have problems. Plus I'm white as shit. Okay, fine. I'll give people that because that gets brought up a lot. Fine, whatever. I'm not going to argue with you. I've literally talked to police officers at bars for hours, and they're like, yes, it's completely true. We beat the fuck out of black people. I'm like, holy shit. Like, so I get it. Like it's a real thing. Okay. But I think of what I do and I think of my audience as an exchange. I give you all this information and stuff for free. In exchange, you help me to understand the information better by, if there is something that occurs to you, you give me some of the information. What happened? Where were you taken? What did you say? Can you get the body cam footage? So a lot of this research has evolved through sort of like a crowd-sourced type of activity, right? But the thing is that monetary exchange was never a part of that. So even though, yes,
yeah, but setting people up for situations and then asking for feedback. I'm talking like, let's say, for example, and I'll give you the example of like the driving, like telling people not to have a driver's license, to not use a tag, use private tags, the right to travel stuff, and they go get pulled over and they're arguing with police and they're going to have to go to court and deal with this whole mess of situation. And the person who put them in that position doesn't drive around without their plates and tags, and they have a driver's license.
Oh, okay, I get that. Okay, I get that.
That's what what you're doing is more of like that's a learning process. Like, but I'm saying,
I definitely don't have a driver's license.
People to fail.
I don't have a driver's license, and I have been using diplomatic tags. Actually, it's funny. I had the diplomatic tags sitting here on my desk. I hadn't told anyone else too much about them. I was a little bit nervous about using them. And then I went down to Slaughterhouse for an event. This was, I think, October of 23. And he has this fucking cop car with these crazy fucking plates, fully functional lights. It looks just like a police car. It even has like the symbol Republic of Slaughterhouse, and it looks just, I mean, you would never in a billion years not tell. On the back, it said call 911 for strippers, tacos, and jazzercise, and he also has his own entire fucking fire truck. And on the side, it says, where the hose at? HOSE in huge letters, right? And they all have these fucking crazy plates and all this stuff. And I was sitting there and I was looking at him and I was looking at his shit and I go, I am being such a fucking pussy. I said, I'm going home tonight and I'm going to pull in. It's a 3-hour drive there and then a 3-hour drive back. I don't care how fucking tired I am. I'm going upstairs. I'm getting my toolbox. I'm getting that plate and I'm putting that motherfucker on tonight. And that was the night that I put on the diplomatic plate. So that was probably September 29th or something of 23. And I've had them on ever since. So I do try my best to test everything on myself first to the best of my abilities. Or if I release theories or ideas, I try to get on board with them as soon as I can. But when it comes to getting pulled over or interacting with cops, I'm not going to deliberately drive like a madman to try to egg or antagonize some police officer to try to pull me over. I am going to speed and drive definitely more erratic than most people on the road. And then if it happens, it happens. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. I'm definitely not going 45 fucking miles an hour on a 45. I'll tell you that right now. So, you know.
No, I get what you're saying, man. And I wasn't trying to put you in that category.
No, I
And
get that. I just want to be clear,
it.
because some people have said that, and it's just like, well, I'm not gonna
No, if I thought you were
I'm not
causing harm,
gonna take this fucking 45 right here in my hand and start shooting it out the window to fucking try to see how, you know, how I can deal with the police. You know what I mean? I'm just not gonna do that. So
you wait
that's
till
an
the
extreme
end of a
example,
3-hour long interview for this thing to get an age restriction again.
No.
I'm just messing with you. I
But
just
yeah,
thought it
it's
was
like,
funny. We've been good.
yeah, it's a I'm telling you, man, I've mentioned this before, and some people think it's interesting and some people think I'm crazy. When you start to really, really, really understand this, and then you start talking to police officers. I was on a show with an Ohio clerk of court. In fact, shit, I have to actually, I'm going to do an announcement tonight, because on this Sunday we have a Q&A with him. I'm going to be the host, and I'm going to ask him about like his job as the clerk of court, how long he's been the clerk of court, what kind of things does he experience, what kind of issues. Like, we're going to get a whole insider's view into an Ohio
I'd love to
clerk.
see that. I need
Right?
to see the interview that you did, because I was
It was
question.
awesome.
I was I think you announced what channel it is. I think I saved it in
A rethink tank, re-think tank.
because one of my questions when I come to the clerk of courts is that if we're talking about, let's say, I get a ticket, just a normal process, not talking about any of this other stuff. I speed, I go to court, I get a ticket, I pay it, but it's said that it's already paid before I pay it. That would be the clerk of court that deals with something like that.
Yeah, so these are the kind of questions that I'm probably going to have a live audience for this one. I don't typically do that, but I think for this one it'd be good. This Sunday,
You're gonna do it live on your channel?
Yeah, I'll be posting about it.
I'm gonna post this on Monday, so people won't even, except for like my private members, they'll see it beforehand. But so by the time this comes out, you should already have a replay of the live stream with the clerk of court, which would be really cool. And
this
you said
Sunday,
again,
the 23rd at 3 p.m. PST, Pacific Standard Time. Yeah, so
okay, so 6 p.m. my time on your YouTube channel.
It's going to be a Riverside link. I will be announcing it on social media, and then also doing an email blast on it.
So they doing it live on their channel or your channel?
My channel.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. Well, I look forward to that, man. And I definitely got it. And you said again, the channel is Rethinking.
His channel that I was a guest on his show, and it was a crazy cool show, really kind of a unique show, is the Rethink Tank podcast.
The Rethink Tank. Okay, cool. I'll find that and I'll put it in, I'll link it down below in the video description, along with your social media links as well. So if people missed that first conversation that you and I did together, I definitely encourage you to check that out. That'll be linked in the video description. Again, make sure you're subscribed over at Brandon's YouTube channel. It's going to be linked down below, as well as his X account and his website, which you can find all of his other websites at the top left-hand side of the website. So yeah. Appreciate you, man. I'm definitely looking forward to the next one. If you can bear with me 1 second, just going to do a quick wrap up. So,
sweet.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in. Again, links will be down below for everything we talked about. Make sure you're subscribed here at Rice Against the Grain if you're not already. Check out the links that are down below in the video description and the pinned comment. And with that being said, as always, I encourage you to be a blessing to others. Treat people how you want to be treated. Be the glitch you want to see in this matrix. Be the change you want to see in this world. And until next time.